The June 8th, 2020 City Council will be called to order. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Before we get to that, we're going to welcome Mayor David Alvey from the Unified Government for our meeting tonight. And we welcome you very much and look forward to hearing your presentation or whatever you've got to say. Whatever. Thank you very much. Okay. The first item on the agenda will be approval of the minutes from the May 26th meeting.
I move to approve the minutes for May 26, 2020.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the minutes of the May 26th meeting. Would the clerk please call roll?
Cahar?
Yes.
Malat?
Yes.
Shriver?
Yes.
Stites?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes.
Next item will be a statement of the bills paid in the amount of $166,598.92.
Make a motion to approve statement of bills in the amount of $166,598.92.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the statement of the bill paid. Would the clerk please call roll?
Cahar?
Yes.
Malat?
Yes.
Shriver?
Yes.
Stites?
Yes.
Adams?
Yes. The next item on the agenda will be a request for comments from the public. Would you please come to the podium, state your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Nope.
Is it on underneath down here?
Well, that's
I'll say, no battery.
Turn it off.
You need a battery.
Okay, I can't see the red line. Is the red light on? Okay.
All right, I'm Connie Henry. I live at 1123 South 102nd Terrace. I watched the latest City Council meeting held May 26, 2020, not once but twice. Here's my take on the town center issue. The city of Edwardsville, Kansas is living in unprecedented times. The pandemic has wreaked havoc on our world. Lives have been lost, jobs have been lost, schools and churches have had to close. The national government saw fit to give $1,200 each to the majority of us to help us over the rough spots and support. Families are struggling to put food on the table and to find jobs and to stay safe. It became national news today that the U.S. entered a recession in February 2020, according to the Wall Street Journal, ending 189 months of economic growth. Although we are presently in phase 3 of the Kansas reopening plan, I am still hesitant to meet in large churches, in large groups, or even to attend church. All of these issues factor into the decisions which the City Council will be making this evening. As the city considers the town-centered redevelopment plan, as Councilman Adams stated, we must be careful to protect the reserves that we have. Although the city manager's memo states that we can cover the $750,000 cost by using 2019 bond proceeds, economic development funds, and future bond proceeds, and that it won't cost the city anything, it boils down to this fact. Ultimately, the residents pay for all of these expenditures. Just because it doesn't come out of this general fund does not mean it doesn't cost the city. Our tax money goes to pay for everything which the city builds. It's an incredibly bad idea to push to spend this money in this matter at this time. It may be true that municipal bond interest rates are cheap, but the economy is in major flux. Just because the rates are low does not mean that it's a good time to do any of this. As Councilman Stites stated, we cannot even see far enough into the future to know what the requirements will ultimately be for the municipal buildings in the face of the pandemic. Our world has changed irrevocably, and we have to be ready to flex and change with it or suffer the consequences. Although building public infrastructure may stimulate the overall economy, it certainly will not stimulate the economy to Edwardsville, except for the taxes from the gas and food purchased by the workers who will come with the construction companies from outside the city to build these structures. median income for Edwardsville as of 2018 was approximately $62,000 a year. And the percentage of families at poverty level has steadily increased from 12% to upwards of 20%. These families are not the ones who are going to shop at any specialty retail stores we don't build them. Our demographics do not even support the possibility of having a grocery store. In light of the recession, the economy will contract and jobs will be even harder
I'm
to
sorry, you
find.
have 30 seconds.
Can we afford to take this risk at this time? I know that this was not a hastily contrived plan, and I appreciate the time and effort which has gone into it. And the police and yes, the police and fire departments deserve professional spaces in which to work, but the timing is just incredibly bad. I would ask the council members this evening to vote against any further development until it is feasible to do so. I don't know when that would be, but I know I do not support any bond issues.
Your time is up.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Please.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. My name is John Munson. I am here with Village South Development, and as some of you know, we have been down since early March with updates on the status, and we met as recently as last Wednesday with more dialogue in hopes of resolving whatever we have to contend with. And I was actually hoping there could have been a meeting this afternoon. I know you're going into executive session, and I would never ask to be a party to any conversation that's attorney-client privilege, but I do want you to know that I'm here to make myself available in whatever forum you're interested for any questions, concerns, and comments. So, thank you.
Thank you, John.
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Council, good evening. I'm Lane Cooper, 1535 South 104th Terrace. I too am here tonight over concerns regarding the town center. Among other things, on page 6 of the last presentation, it was indicated that the cost would be to be determined. Now, how many of us buy something without knowing the end state of the cost? I'm very concerned about the financial structure and the debt of the city. I'm going to share with you some things I doubt all of you know. At the end of last year, we were about $7.2 million in debt. Then we added the 3.7 minus the 1.2, and it pushes up to about 9.6. And now, we don't even know what the city town center is going to cost. And on one of the slides in the last presentation, it was indicated we might be as high as $15 million in debt moving forward. So in about 3 or 4 years, by your hand, we will have doubled our city's debt, if that slide remains true. From the outside, we would probably all agree this is an old building. I bet the fire chief would have a heyday for wiring, right? But have we even done an analysis on what it would take to just survive with this building for another 5 years? Why are we pushing town center so hard, so fast, right off the coattails of the Riverview redevelopment project, which, by the way, took up all the money that was left over in the 3.7 minus the 1.2, and the other 8 projects that supported that bond issue are now being left out. Resolution 2019-19 indicated 8 different projects around the city that supported that GO bond. In the last presentation, there were only 4. And let's face it, the Riverview redevelopment project is soaking up all that money. So why did we even write a resolution to begin with, or an ordinance, if that's what we were going to do? So again, 7.2 million, 9.6. Moving forward, it's going to be almost $15 million on a project we don't know if we even need. Couldn't we survive with this building for a few more years? Thank you.
Okay, if there are no other requests or comments, we will move on to the next item on the agenda, which would be Mayor CEO David Alvey, Unified Government of Wyandotte County, Kansas City, Kansas. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. So I was admiring the map, and Mike, so I now know it was between 1940
Okay.
and 1952 because Highland Crest is not platted. It's not shown. So somewhere in that map is. I want to thank you all for having given me this time to come and address. I received a letter from the Edwardsville City Council and regarding the Restart WICO Committee. And I just wanted to clear up some misunderstandings about what the task force was and how it was constituted. I want to say, first of all, that the task force was not a policy-making body in any way, shape, or form. There was no power given to that body to do anything. This was simply put together to guide or advise the public health leaders. That was Dr. Griner and Dr. Corriveau from the Wyandotte County Public Health Department, as we tried to put together a plan for stepping down from the stay-at-home order and relaxing restrictions on business activities and any other kind of operations that would be regulated. So again, this body that was put together was not a decision-making body, had no authority. They were simply there. We were simply there to try and advise Drs. Griner and Dr. Corriveau as we stepped down from the stay-at-home orders. And what we were looking for was simply this. We asked business owners and other kind of people-controlled large organizations, small businesses, large businesses, shop owners, restaurant owners, that we wanted them to hear the proposals that were being suggested for stepping down the orders, and we wanted to hear from business owners and others, what will this look like in your place of business? How, for instance, would you put together social distancing requirements? How would you make sure that you could sanitize your salon? How could you make sure that you could provide hand sanitizer for your customers who came into your restaurant? And so what we were looking for was not really geographic representation. There were large parts of the county that there were no individuals from. That's not what we were seeking. I'm from Turner. There was no one from Turner other than me on there, and I was only on there because I called the task force. There was no one, for instance, from Armourdale. We did actually have people from out of the city, and we did that. For instance, we had a gentleman, Michael Tallboy, who works for government relations for Burns and McDonnell, the engineering firm. He was asked to be on this committee because he served on similar committees in other jurisdictions across the country, and we felt that he would be able to bring back to us best practices that were happening in other places. What was really encouraging is after, I think, we met twice, and then the third time when we were coming back to look at some adjustments to the stay-at-home order and further relaxation, he reported to us that, in fact, we were way ahead of the game than other jurisdictions across the country. He was really impressed by what we had done. So I want to again reiterate that we were looking for business owners. We did ask Dr. Brungart from the Edwardsville Bonner Springs School District to serve on this because we wanted schools represented. Again, it was not geographic. We were looking for representative businesses who could give us some ideas. So Melissa Need, for instance, one of the partners in the Dot Spot, she was there because of, she owned a restaurant and a bar. We had a salon owner come and serve on the committee. So those were the kinds of things we were looking for. It was not geographic, and it was not, there were not, the only political leaders on there was Dave Pierce, who was on the Bonner Springs Edwardsville School Board, and myself, and Commissioner McKiernan. And the reason I asked Mr. Commissioner McKiernan to chair that committee is because he has a doctorate in neurophysiology, and he would be able to help us and articulate what the data meant about what the virus was doing, how it was moving, what it might do, and he could give that perspective. It really was not even a body of elected representatives, because again, it had no real authority. So we provided our input, they made suggestions, we helped them, guide them in putting together the template, what this would look like, and we published the plan, which of course was then superseded by the governor's plan. So I want to say that we in no way tried to exclude Edwardsville. That was never our intention. It was simply to really look for business owners, and we were able to gather them, and we wanted to keep it relatively limited. It ended up growing far larger than I wanted it to, but it was a representative group of businesses and different kinds of organizations who could give us feedback about, practically speaking, if you put this kind of relaxation on my business, this is what I will have to do to accommodate that. And these are the things I can't do. And so that was extremely helpful for us. So Edwardsville was not intentionally excluded, but then again, no part of the city was intentionally included for that matter. That's not what we were looking for. So I felt it was necessary for me to come and address this directly. I appreciate the letter, and oftentimes people don't understand really perhaps what the purpose of that board was, that task force was, and I just wanted to kind of give you an explanation for that. And thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If I could respond,
Yes, sir.
I think we need to put this in context, and I have a written response as well, that just to put everything in context, so you understand why it became such an issue. Thanks for coming to the meeting, by the way, really appreciate it. I moved to Edwardsville in 2007, and 10 years after the unified government was formed. And I assumed when I moved here that being a unified government, it meant that all entities within that would be duly represented in the unified government. In fact, on the wico.org/facts webpage, it says that the city, Kansas City, is part of the unified government, which also includes the cities of Bonner Springs and Edwardsville. The implication there is that there's 3 parts to make up the unified government. I was elected to the city council 13 years ago with the anticipation that we would have a mutually beneficial relationship between Edwardsville and the other members of the unified government. We are very grateful for the assistance of CEO Reardon gave us during the time he helped us overcome some very difficult times in our history. During these 13 years, we've had 2 joint meetings with the KCK Commission, Bonner Springs, and Edwardsville City Councils. It would have been great to have them every year or two, as it is important for each member of the unified government to know the issues that the others are facing. We have much to learn from each other, and it can help us build unity and trust. As our CEO, I'm sure you're aware that 21.58% of our real estate taxes are allocated to this county operating budget. In the past, we've tried to work with the county on matters such as using equipment that our taxes help purchase for the county to trim brush and trees alongside our roadways. We were denied access to the equipment. So in order to maintain our roadways, we had to maintain the roadways properly, we had to invest taxpayer money in our own equipment, which, as you can imagine, is expensive. Our taxpayers are paying a large percentage of their property taxes to the county, and we're not sure what we're getting appropriate, or that we're getting appropriate value in return for our investment. At our last joint meeting, when the city governance bodies raised the question about what benefits our citizens receive in exchange for the county taxes that they paid since the unified government was created, the answers were disappointing and certainly didn't match our contributions. The COVID-19 crisis has reopened and rubbed some salt into the wounds that have existed for quite some time for many of us in Edwardsville. With the exception of Dr. Brungart, we were not represented on the Restart WICO committee. There were 2 elected officials from KCK, none from Edwardsville. There were 6 UG employees, none from Edwardsville. There were 2 quote-unquote Bonner Edwardsville representatives. Neither one of them lived or had businesses in Edwardsville. We do appreciate the addition of Doug McWilliams from Herff Jones. However, I believe that we should have at least 1 elected official and an employee and a business representative on the committee that exercises authority over our citizens. We're different. For instance, you guys in KCK, the city of KCK, have about 1,100 people per square mile. We have less than 500. That's a totally different situation and needs to be considered on county-wide policies. Will you commit to us and our citizens to put at least 1 elected official and at least one Edwardsville employee and at least one Edwardsville business representative on any committee that presently or in the future will have impact on the lives of our citizens. It is our desire to have a unified government, but I don't believe that can truly happen until all members of a unified government are appropriately represented on those committees.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I'll just respond to some of those. So I don't know about what the decision was made about helping with the roads and the maintenance. But again, the county budget goes for county operations. It would not be for the unified government to provide mowing or other kinds of work other than for county roads. So for instance, that belongs to each municipality, obviously, to care for its own city streets. There are only a few county roads left in the community, and those, I believe, are in the unincorporated areas of Loring. That's my understanding. I could be wrong about it, but that's what I understand. I agree, I like the idea of coming together, and I think my first year, we did schedule a meeting with the different entities, with Bonner and with Edwardsville. I will say that I have a very good working relationship with Mayor McTaggart and with Mayor Harrington. We meet on a monthly basis, and we bring common issues, and they have brought to me concerns they had, and we have worked many of those things out. So I will take those back and work those out. Again, I want to say that the task force had no authority. There was no authority in this task force. Drs. Corvo and Dr. Griner sat on this committee. The Administrator Bach was there. Those were the three. I don't recall who were the other three UG employees that would have been on the restart, but they were there for support, technical support or staff support, getting the information out, doing those kinds of things. They were not decision-making because the body was not a decision-making body. So I appreciate your concern, but again, I'd say that the Restart Committee has no authority over any decision. That authority for public health is statutory from the state to the county health department and Drs. Griner and Corvo. I asked for the committee because as we were into the virus, it was clear that we anticipated that we were going to flatten the curve. That was the intent. We wanted to stomp on that virus to get it under control so it didn't spread and overwhelm our healthcare system. But we also anticipated that we were going to be able to step down from these. What was that going to look like? And so 2 weeks before, I began to ask the question, how are we going to step down from this? What is our plan? It was unclear at the time because we didn't know what the governor was going to do. As you know, we issued, the health department issued a stay-at-home order, and it was in operation until the governor came out with a stay-at-home order, which superseded our own. So she then took over responsibility for every county, which fine, that was good because now we're under umbrella, we're all under the same thing, we're going to be able to, that's good coordination. But when it came to the point where it was clear, I kept trying to get to the governor and say, what's your plan? Are you going to do a regional then as you step down? Are you going to do a regional response? Are you going to just stay with the state? Couldn't get an answer until about 4 days before we needed to come up with something. So we were under a time crunch on putting this Restart White Book together. So that was one of the factors as well. We needed to have a plan in place, and I knew how long this would take. I thought it would take. So I pushed Dr. Griner, let's start looking at this. What is it going to look like? What is happening other places, in other communities across the country, really around the world, where they are stepping down from the stay-at-home. So, and I will say this, the county budget, and we're going to be doing our budget presentation on kind of a workshop this Thursday, but the full budget will be presented in the second meeting in June. You're going to see, again, the county general fund pretty much pays for parks, county parks, the health department, the district attorney's office, the court system, the sheriff's department, the jail. That's pretty much it. So the services that you as Edwardsville residents receive are the same that anybody receives, and it doesn't pay for road reconstruction, it doesn't pay for road maintenance, it doesn't pay for, you name it, any other number of services. It's pretty much, again, justice, which is the courts, the sheriff's department, the health department, Wyandotte County Lake, Wyandotte County Park, Pearson Park, and other than that, I don't know what else it pays for. I don't know. So that's where it goes. And it doesn't pay for street maintenance because other than those few roads out in Lori, I think that's the only place that actually is any road maintenance. And we actually have an interlocal agreement with Bonner Springs that handle that. But
Well, you can imagine if you were sitting in Edwardsville and look at a list like this committee, and you think, where do we chop liver?
right, I understand.
There's nobody with important ideas and views here at this end.
Yeah, I
And
understand.
so that it just eggs on that whole
Sure.
ununified government concept as
Yeah.
opposed to what I think people are trying to accomplish,
Yes, I
which is a unified.
And I appreciate that, I understand. And that was a misstep. If I had not been, I'd asked for some names, and when I was talking with Mayor McTaggart and Mayor Harrington, we were talking about starting together this Restart Whiteville Task Force, I said, I've got to have them by tomorrow. So that's what the process started, we pulled it together. So when it was time, we did add, there was no, again, I've got to start another task force today about community and police relations, and I'm already getting people saying, well, I need to be on the committee. And again, well, I mean, we can have, I could easily put 50 people on these committees, and they just don't work anymore. So, but I understand, I'm not trying to make excuses. I wish I had done that at the beginning. And I wish I could stay longer, but I'm supposed to be a vigil. Thank you all, I appreciate your time.
Mayor, thank you very much.
You are.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, next item on the agenda is to consider 2019 financial statement and report of the city's independent certified public accountants.
Mayor, we have with us this evening Mr. Sean Gordon, the Gordon CPA firm. As you'll recall, we changed auditors this year. We were already set to go out for our annual review, we generally go out every 3 to 5 years on services. Our former auditors actually were getting out of the business. Actually, the firm that Mr. Gordon worked for also was getting out of the business of municipal audits. And through a combination of things, Mr. Gordon put together his firm that had a great deal of knowledge in the area of auditing. I think what probably made this audit, anytime you have a new auditor, they look at things different, and in some cases even present how the financial numbers are a little different. So we had a new auditor, and as you know, we also changed finance directors mid-year, which created some transitional issues that got picked up in this audit. I don't expect that there's any things I'm not aware of, but anyway, so it's kind of a unique year. It's fairly seldom that you would have a new auditor and new finance director both occurring in the same period of time. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Gordon. He may wish to give a few opening comments about his firm and then take us through the audits themselves.
Yeah, so as you may remember, and I thought,
Yes.
So I was with a different company based out of Lawrence that did governmental audits, and I spent 11 years at that firm doing government audits. So they decided about this time last year to no longer do that process, to have that department. So I purchased that department and started my own company, and then was able to add a few more lines like Edwardsville, and so I'm up to about 38 cities, county school district audits. So again, I'm very well versed in audits of cities and cities this size. So I'll go through the audit report that you just received. Inside the bound copy, there are 2 different letters. One of them, the single page, is audit recommendations, and I'll go over that at the end of the presentation. The second one is just an FYI for the members of the council and the mayor. So starting with pages 1 and 2 of that bound audit report, this is the independent auditor's report. Here we discuss your guys' responsibilities for the financial statements along with city's management's responsibilities for the financial statements, and then our responsibilities for the financial statements. And our largest, biggest responsibility is to issue an opinion on the city's financial statements for calendar year 2019. And if you flip to page 2, the second paragraph down, you'll see a heading that says unmodified opinion on regulatory basis of accounting. So we issue the highest and cleanest opinion we're allowed to give under state guidelines. So that reflects very well on the financial management of the city for 2019. So a pat on the back, gold star to anyone in the city involved in financial management of the city's cash, the city's internal control procedures, AP payrolls, all that good stuff involved in financial operations of the city. If you flip forward to page 3, this is the summary statement of receipts, expenditures, and unencumbered cash. You'll see here all the funds of the city in the left-hand column, along with beginning cash, receipts, expenses, and then ending cash in the right-hand column. So you see the very bottom right-hand column, how much the city ended with cash on hand at 12/31/2019. And then flipping forward, the next kind of big section is pages 4 through 10. There's quite a bit of information here, and you can catch up on that, good reading later. Here we discuss the city's accounting policies, involvement in the Capers retirement plan, long-term debt items, all that good stuff, and much, much more there listed as well. This section is kind of the same as what you've seen the past few years. There were no changes required by the state for 2019. And then the final part of that bound copy that you have is pages 11 through 36. And these are more detailed breakouts of those funds that were presented on page 3. So in most of those pages, you'll see a comparison to the budget that was adopted for 2019. And you'll see a few that don't have a budget, and that's because they're a non-budgeted fund, like capital projects funds and some agency funds as well. There was one change from how the previous auditor showed some funds to how we show funds, and that is on page 36. These are agency funds of the city, meaning that the city controls the money, but it's not the city's money, if that makes sense. So we separate that out and show it differently because we didn't want the city, the council to think that was money that they needed to plan on investing in some way in the future. Because that money belongs to a payroll clearing fund, so those are liabilities that need to be paid. And then a cash bond fund, so those are cash bonds that are refunded to, through the municipal court process. And then finally, pages 37 through 44, I believe, is the single audit portion of the audit. So this is, I believe, new this year. This might be the first time you guys are seeing this. So anytime a city or any other entity receives and spends $750,000 or more of federal grant money, it's required to undergo a special audit of that grant program. So since the city received started the process in 2018 and then received and spent a little over $1 million for the Assistance to Firefighters Grant program in 2019, it had to undergo a special audit. So we looked at that. We looked at federal requirements, state requirements on that, and we also issued an unmodified opinion on that as well. So again, the highest and cleanest opinion we're allowed to give under federal guidelines. And then the audit recommendations, you have that single piece of paper there. There are 2 audit recommendations. So we discussed those with city staff, and we will check up on those when we do the audit next year. So if you have any questions on those comments or on anything in the bound copy, please let me know.
I do want to take one note, just because I always like to make sure we're as transparent as possible. So we did have, if you look on page 10, note 12, it'll show a statutory violation. It had to do with our economic development fund. As you know, that, for the most part, that's money that comes from IRBs, and then it's used for economic development purposes. We did modify the budget, but there was I don't remember what, $8,000 or $9,000 difference. May not have been that much. 11. The fund was never overdrafted, overdrawn, so to speak. The cash was there. It's just we did not get our modified budget when we did the budget amendments at the end of the year, which is basically miscalculated that. The biggest change, if you recall, we before the bonds were issued in 2019 for the Riverview Crossroads project, we used monies from the Economic Development Fund, and then we did a reimbursement resolution and refunded those dollars. So that's the biggest change that was in that budget area that we did not originally budget. We didn't know we were going to spend those monies in August of 2018 or something. So it's all, I mean, there are no issues with it, but I just always like to make sure that there's no questions on anything about statutory violations. You're generally looking for violations that would be, we spent more money than you had, so we have negative cash balances, those types of things. We didn't have those, so. Always like to make sure those are out there.
The phrase statutory violation sounds like probably not great. Can you explain what that means? Is that something that's just commonplace that happens, or is that something not?
You want to handle
It happens, it's not a huge deal, it's just, there's a statute out there, and I just think it actually references it in there. So you can look that statute up in the Kansas statutes. It just says that a city shouldn't overspend their budget authority.
There's two general statutory issues that we have to work around or work on. Number one, every year, as you recall, we adopt a budget. And the budget sets the maximum expenditure by fund. So if you say you're only going to spend $10,000 and you bring in $50,000 in revenue and you spend $40,000 and you still have $10,000 to the good, you still violated that provision of statutes that says I can't spend more than I budget. Every year, we're no different than every place else. We go through the budget and say, okay, where are those areas where a year and a half ago things have changed? The second one, which I would say if there's a more serious of the two, is you expended more dollars than you have cash on hand in that fund. So there are times when you may basically have a transfer or borrows from funds that'll do that. But I will tell you, there's no secret, when I came here, our general fund had a $277,000 negative fund balance. In other words, we spent $277,000 more in cash in 1 year than we had cash on hand. That is by far the most serious violation, in my opinion. That means you didn't have the money to spend. So in this case, it wasn't that the money wasn't there. There's $400,000 in the fund, so it's not a matter of that. It's a budget violation.
Thank you for.
We certainly try never to have those, and we seldom have those, but they do occur.
Thanks.
Were there any funds that you consider in jeopardy or not within an appropriate range?
No, when we check, usually some of the larger funds, there's a GFOA, Government Finance Officers Association recommendation of having cash on hand of 3 to 6 months of expenditures. All those, I think, fell in line or relatively close in line to that recommendation.
I would say that on that one, I mean, I think our solid waste fund, as you know, is probably the weakest of those funds. Again, it's predominantly pass through, and it's more of a timing issue. That is, we get billed and pay the bill from the waste company regardless. It's more of a timing of revenues coming in from the payment of the customers. So personally, I would like to see a little stronger fund balance in that area, more for timing purposes. It's not that we have some unexpected, there's not a likely unexpected expense like you would have in, say, the sewer fund or the general fund where, you have some unexplained, lift station goes up on a couple $100,000, right? You don't have that in the garbage fund in our case because it's contract. If we had our own operations of the trucks and things, then I would say that fund would be general.
Could you help me understand page 37, please?
Yes, so that is the schedule of expenditures of federal awards. So that first one listed there, the Assistance to Firefighters Grant, that's how much the city received and spent on the fire department's, I believe they're called SCBA, self-contained breathing apparatus that they purchased. And then the other two is a forestry grant that the city received through Kansas State University, and the last one there is a STEP grant that the police department received through the state as well.
Okay, so it's 3 separate grants.
3 separate.
All right, I was trying to figure out
Yes.
one.
And the AFG, the reason why you don't normally see this, because it's not unusual, we might have those smaller grants, but because of the dollar amount, they wouldn't trigger this separate audit. The AFG is the one where we did with the 10 agencies, we served as the primary agency, and then we just, we paid our share, we distributed the rest of that. So the vast majority of those expenditures were covered by revenues, federal revenues, and the revenues from the partnering agencies. But we, being the agency that did the grant, we were the responsible party. I will say that part of the funds paid by the other agencies help to offset the cost of the single audit, because there is an additional cost for that audit, which we knew that going in. Each of those other agencies paid a personal share of that cost. I think overall, and I know considering all things that we've been talking about, we'll talk about tonight, I think what you will continue to see is that we maintain a strong fiscal place. I think that, from staff and council, we do collectively an excellent job in maintaining the finances. I think I've said more than once, our number one priority is the fiscal integrity of the organization. There's not one that you have a higher responsibility for, that we have a higher responsibility for. It's why we do audits and budgets and quarterly financial reports and all the things that we do that I know sometimes they may get a bit boring, but it's the reason we do it. There's nothing in here relative to ending balances that were unexpected or not planned for. So again, I think collectively the departments and the council have done an excellent job. I've been here as long as Mr. Adams has been. I can assure you the first couple of audits were not very good. You can't change things in a day, but I would say in the past decade we've had excellent audits that we've been able to build upon and maintain financial integrity. I'm personally proud of that. And I know from an organization, from our staff, we're proud of that. But it never goes without discussions. And Mr. Gordon, thank you for an unusual year. Normally auditors come in, they spend a week. There's a little more interaction. We had to box things, some out the door. They came and picked them up. They brought them back. So a lot more electronic.
As well.
We've had Zoom meetings. It may be the new audit. I don't know. I'm more of an in-person kind of person, but it worked well. I think there's a few things we picked up as we do in all audits, things that we can do better, how we proceed. So that's in the audit recommendations. Take those and take them to heart and get those things along. So basically, the council's obligation is to, this is really your audit, so the auditor works for you. He's prepared to do the financial audit for the year ending 2019. And so typically, we would have a recommendation to accept the audit as presented by your certified public auditor. Accountant, whatever the right word is.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we accept the audit for the year ended December 31st, 2019 from Gordon CPA firm from Lawrence, Kansas.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to accept the audit report from Gordon CPA for the 2019 audit report. No other questions? Would the clerk please call Ma'am?
KR,
Yes.
Malott,
Yes.
Driver,
Yes.
Scotty,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda, we'll consider authorizing the city manager to enter into a contract with KBS Contractors, Inc. for the development of the guaranteed maximum price contract for redevelopment of town center, and consider resolution 2020-06 authorizing the reimbursement from future bond sales.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to stand here because I think it's just easier to do the presentation from. So.
Well, and it's hard for people to hear.
Right.
I know that when you're facing this way and people in the back can't hear, what you're saying, and we need to get back to where we have the microphone to where we're being addressed, that
Yeah.
we have some stand up and address it that way.
Right, so thank you. Well, this is old business, but I think I would like to just, because these were brought up in the public comment around the town center overall project, but maybe some clarifications is, you know, I think I agree, and I think there was a comment about planning, and so, you know, lack of planning will certainly lead to lack of failure. So this is something that's been ongoing and will be ongoing. So I want to make sure we're talking about this from that standpoint. And I think there was a comment made, or there was, that the money that was issued in the 2019 bond issue was all allocated to the Riverview Crossroads project. And you get the monthly cash reports. All of the funds that came in under the 2019 GO bonds either were allocated for the 1.2 million roughly that was used to refinance temporary notes, right? Or for one of the projects, including Riverview, property acquisition for public works, town center, 4th Street improvements, 98th Street improvements, and general street drainage improvements. And those funds are sub-allocated to each one of those projects. So to the Riverview, there's only been about $540,000 allocated to that overall project. So it hasn't gone anywhere but to those areas that were specifically out. The way it's done in bonding, there were 2 resolutions. So land and buildings are treated differently than public works. And public works is streets, drainage, sewers, stormwater, right? So you had to have 2 separate resolutions, and the resolutions were for the total amount of the 2. So the total amount that was for basically the public works facility and town center was one resolution, and everything else was in the other resolution. So the monies that were allocated by projects was spent by projects. So in order for us to move money from a project to a project, it would require us to come to the council. So I just want to make sure that part is clear. So we're really back to talking about this concept of talking about how do we rebuild the heart of our community, the center of our community, which is where we're sitting today. So I'm going to go back a little bit. At the last meeting, it was kind of, I think there was a number of discussions of what have we done, what haven't we done, what were our presentations, and all of us trying to remember what we said, when we said it. So the best way to do is kind of go back to presentations we've already made. I cleaned them up a little bit because some parts of it weren't back. So in December of 2019, we kind of said we're going to look at kind of where we were, where we are, and where we're going. So as you know, we own this overall site now, but this strip center was built in the 1970s. It was part of kind of a bigger overall project. And then in 1989, we built the fire station that sits to the south of this building. We then, because we don't have active sleeping facilities in there, we don't have active office facilities, because it was really built to be a volunteer / minimal staffed fire station, right? It wasn't really designed in today's time frame where you have fire and EMS 24/7 stationed at one location, along with your administrative staff, being chiefs and deputy chiefs, etc. So that was done in '89. We added some office trailers in 2017. The city at that point owned the southern portion of the property. We say parcels 813, 815, and 816, which basically is the building we're in and the building that connects to us, those parcels, and where the police station is at. That was 3 parcels. If we go back a little farther, back in 2014, we were getting a temporary fix for our police department, and we acquired, or got, 4 trailers, connected 5, okay, 4 or 5 trailers, that are all connected to make a building that had been in use by Leawood Police Department for 20-something years over there, and obviously they had outgrown it and moved into new facilities. So we have relocated over here, basically paid those costs. And then in July of 18, we bought the north half of the property. So when I came to you in 2019, that was kind of the update where we were at. So we kind of have the land acquisition. And so then at that point, it was kind of where are we? So if you recall, we started off back in 18 doing an overall facility study. So we looked at all of our facilities, the community center, we looked at parks buildings, we looked at City Hall, police, kind of generally what buildings do we have, what is their conditions, what things need to be done to make them adequate or improve, or is it best that they be replaced? That was kind of the general, just kind of what do we have, how old are they, 50-year-old, 60-year-old air conditioners sitting on buildings, things like that. So we kind of did that. We worked with ARC Images, which they're represented here tonight, right behind me, did that first phase. From that, we entered into an agreement with both KBS and with ARC Images, really to do some project management work, to look to see if this site could be used for more than the public. So this town center concept is not about building a building. It's about rebuilding the entire town center and how do we recreate the heart of the community. So when somebody says, where's Edwardsville? They know where that's at, they know where to go. It's a place people want to be. We talked about the parks and other things. So we entered into first an agreement with KBS. In January of 2019, they just kind of looked and said, was this idea just a crazy idea? There's no way you can ever do anything. Your best bet is just to build a building and we'll call it good. They basically said and came back to you all saying, no, we think that there's opportunity here commercially as well as public. So we have the public and a private side of it. We entered an agreement with them to do some project management, and basically that was to get rid of the old north buildings, which we had demoed, as you know, and to work with the architect and engineer to kind of how would this concept lay out. They also went out and helped us with Clemens Real Estate to kind of say, again, is there a market out there for retail? Now, we know you're not building the next big box. You're not going to have a Walmart here. You're not going to have a full-service grocery store here. But what is it that we're missing, and what are the types of facilities, users that can be used? So basically through 2019, we did a lot of those types of things, asking the what ifs, would this work? How would it work? What are some of the concepts? So that's really what we did in 2019. Again, where's my slide, man? Just pictures of demoing the north lot. As you know, all that's gone. There's basically dirt and grass out there. We're still kind of getting it level so it can be mowed, but it's pretty much ours now to take care of. So we got a piece of grass. That's where we're at out there. We also looked at, because we had been thinking about this concept having the public facilities to the south, as you remember, and even looking at building separate buildings. But as we got into this discussions, it makes more sense to move to the north and to develop a single facility for the municipal part, because we have a vacant piece of ground and somewhat everything hinges on the fire department. Right? I mean, in order to do anything, we have to move the fire department into a facility. Or if you have to move the fire department into a facility and you got the police department, everything's kind of in the middle, it's in the way. We moved to this concept, let's go to the north, let's use the south for private development. And so generally, that was the concept that we jointly agreed this is the best way to do it. So we came up with a couple of layout plans. One, I'm going to say, is more linear. So you have a municipal type facility, again, all of your departments in one place instead of having 3 separate buildings. A lot of efficiencies, both in the construction and in the long-term maintenance, because I don't have to maintain separate phone systems and separate computer systems and separate air conditioning systems. I can consolidate a lot of those services. In the middle was more of a promenade with buildings, again, looking at multi-story buildings that would be retail and multifamily or something of that nature, and then reusing the fire station in some private use. We've had discussions with restaurants, that type of use, probably more than one tenant. I mean, it could be more than one user in that space. Commercial kitchen even came up at one point, you know, could that be a commercial kitchen supporting food trucks, right? So, I mean, obviously it's set up for trucks, right? I mean, we don't want to be maintaining semi-trailers, but, you know, could it be used for that? These are some of the concepts that we've talked about. So, when we moved from these concepts, the other concept was more of a concept where I'm going to say you put the parking more in the middle and you have those same buildings kind of around the outside of the project area. Still, you leave, obviously, the fire station, you leave it where it's at, you reuse it, and any new building to the north or kind of the public safety and administrative uses. Most of it is public safety, to be quite honest. Somewhere in 60 to 70% of it is public safety, but that's what you expect because people and stuff, and you know, fire trucks take up a lot of room. I mean, that's just the way it is. Sleeping quarters, things like that. So when we finished that presentation in 2019, there was several places that we said we needed to go, the next step, so to speak. That was kind of finalize the site plan, get it into not what I would call ready to build site, but make sure our concepts fit, they work, more architecture and engineering, a financial plan, which we'll go over again, but we've talked about at some point, and we have not done that yet because we haven't got to that step, is a development agreement for the private piece, right? We're not building the private piece of this puzzle. That's not our part of it. Obviously, we have to be partners in that. It is our ground, so how are we going to maintain that ground? How do we ensure that we have the quality of, you know, we want to have in the town center, et cetera? We need to start getting to building design, right? So it's easy to draw kind of concepts, but now we have to get it into more and more detail. That takes architecture and engineering, and talk about, again, some tenant strategies. We did a little bit with Clemens. There's been a little more done with that, but it really is kind of farther down on the list. You know, we aren't the ones that are going to be leasing buildings to individual tenants. So today we have 2 tenants. I think one of them's here. We want to maintain our tenants, right? I mean, and they've indicated they want to stay here in our community. So we hope to have them as part of our tenant finish. So we got to that point, and so we started putting things together. So that's what we did in 2019, kind of up to 2019. And so everything kind of set a little bit. There's some behind the scenes work. And then really it was getting into this discussion about financing, because not only are we talking about this, we're talking about capital planning overall, right? We have multiple projects. So this isn't our only project that we have to think about funding on the long term. So the next step we did is this capital planning, which we came in April. Again, understanding it was in the middle of our pandemic. I think I said then, I didn't put all the slides in here, right? While it was a dark time, we can't see the light if we don't start looking at it, right? So setting and waiting won't get us anywhere further than where we're standing today. So we need to keep moving this process forward in a reasonable time manner. So I took out all the other projects because mainly we talked about this in Riverview. I think we're all pretty well up to date on Riverview, and it somewhat has only limited bearings in this discussion. So where are we at starting in this year? As you know, we have a concept plan. The buildings are moved and cleared. The site is cleared. We need to get to that final site plan again. And we need to do this, you can call it a guaranteed maximum price contract, develop the contract. So I want to make sure that we're clear. We're not entering into a contract to build the building. As somebody said, well, how do you know how much without planning? That's exactly what we're trying to do. How much will that building cost? I can give you estimates, and they're gonna be estimates of 20% swag in them, and we could go out and issue debt, and then come back and find out we didn't put enough money out there, we gotta go issue more debt, and nobody likes that, or put a bid out on the street only to find out that, you know, we didn't have all our ducks in order. So really what we're talking about here for the most part is the architectural piece, to get a set of plans that you as a body can say, yes, I agree, that's worth that price, or no, it's not worth that price. That's really where we're trying to get to with the GMP. At that point, I think we estimated at 800,000. I know we came back at the last meeting for 825. There was some money, as you know, we issued bonds to do some of this first phase, and some of that work we didn't proceed with, mainly on the engineering side, because until we got a little farther down the road, it doesn't make sense to go out and engineer where sewer lines need to be relocated to, or power, or storm drainage, if you don't kind of know where the buildings are. So that was our estimate then. We now really have tied down this concept, and so far it seems this is where everybody is looking to go. So we have a municipal facility to the north that houses all municipal operations. Doesn't house public works ops like tractors and stuff like that, but people, police, fire, all the trucks, the cars, admin, finance, all things that make us work together. And that's really in the north third. The center third, as you see, again, planned around 4 buildings. Each building is 3 stories. The intent would be that the front lower half, the part towards the street, would be retail, to be determined who those tenants are. The back side on the first floor would be multifamily, and the second and third floors would be multifamily. It would be consisting of 1, 2, and 3 bedroom type units. We're talking market rate units, so these are not subsidized units. This is market rate. This is all private development, right? So this is, the city's not building those units. The city is not the tenant, we're not leasing it. We're not managing the tenant space. We will probably have some form of a business entity that we need to be part of, because we want to make sure the whole site's maintained properly, right? The parking's maintained, the open areas, the detention bases, all the things that work. And again, the existing fire station stays where it's at with modifications. Okay. We are looking at this again in 3 phases. And so, why 3 phases? Well, area 1 is the space that's open, right? The first thing we have to do is figure out where the fire department goes, because they're kind of, right, they have to be operational. So from the day they move from some place to some place, they got to turn and be operational. So once you start that facility, it has, we looked at it, it makes more sense. It's less costly to build a single building than 3 buildings. Does it cost more at the beginning? Yes, because you're building more square footage. We're somewhere around 43,000 square feet at this point for all operations. And you know, you could build 3 buildings at 10 or 15,000 square feet, and you get the same amount of square feet, but now you don't have the common benefits of a single building. We would then really, as the first phase is done, phase 2 would be able to be renovated, but also at the same time, because of the things we have to do in phase 1 for utilities. So we have a power line that runs right through the middle of the site. If you remember, there were buildings under the power line. Can't tell you how that ever happened, but shouldn't have ever been there. So we have to relocate the power. We have to relocate the sewer, which quite honestly, this sewer line is probably one of the oldest in the city from what I can tell. It's clay tile. We know we have problems with it. We've had problems with it. So we're going to relocate it to outside the middle of the lot. And we need to take care of stormwater, because one of the issues we're looking at is we don't want to make the problem any worse down 4th Street. And I think we all know from basically Cliff Lane south, that was always really a drainage place that got turned into a road, floods every time we do it. So part of the cost that we're looking at is how do we address that flooding drainage issue as well? Because I have to do something with the water on the site. We have to act just like we would require other developers to act, right? So for the most part, we're really not probably creating much more water runoff, but there really is no detention, retention, or any other kind of stormwater planning today. Goes out in the street, fills the street up, causes problems. I don't need to tell you about it. So we're looking at that. Phase 3, a portion of it could start early. At least that's what the developer or KBS, that they serve that capacity, feels that they could build probably one of those buildings early on and go ahead and get it occupied. Now again, that's a private sector decision. We'll have to have a development agreement with them. You know, those facts have to be determined at a later date. So, all of this said, I know the biggest question is, well, what's the financing? Where's the dollar and cents come down to? What's it do to the mill levy, right? I think that's the biggest question. So, if you remember, we came to you and we talked about various scenarios. So in 2020, we have an assessed value of just under $70 million, $69,634,397. That, when I say assessed value, that's for the budget year 2020. So it's the assessment of 2019, because assessments are always a year prior. And what we did, we came to you and said, here's 3 basic scenarios. We could take that assessed value and just assume that's all we have, and we could grow it by 1, 3, or 5%. And then we said, we could take the current assessed value and grow it at 1, 3, 5%, and add into it the pilots that are coming off of being on the pilot side and going on to the tax rate. So when we have a building that's on a pilot, tax abatement, right? Over here, if I look on the tax roll, it says 0 taxes, but it has a value, right? We get paid pilots over here, which is generally about 50%. We have different ones, but say 50%. So in the future, the pilot goes away, the property comes on the tax roll, and it grows your tax rate. And then the third area is we assume that those properties that are on pilot are going to grow and be assessed just like all other property, which is what happens in the work, right? Just because they're paying 0 in tax doesn't mean that their value is static. It isn't. So you go look on the tax roll, pick your piece of property, go take a look at it. Right? Pick one and you'll see 2019 and 2020 values already out there. We know they've grown more than we're projecting, which can be good or bad. If you're paying the tax, it grows too fast, you don't like it. If you're trying to fund things, it's nice to have growth in value. So I totally understand. So we did those 3 scenarios. And we're really taking this third scenario, which is we're going to grow the tax base, and then we looked at 1, 3, and 5%. So if we go to the next slide, please, and that shows you what that is. So if we didn't do anything and just assumed our base value grew at 1% a year, it would go from today at around $70 million to about $200 million by year 2040. Why am I picking 2040? Because that's how far our debt goes out. Today, we go out to 2039, right? So what we're talking about, if there's new debt, if it's in 2020, it goes 2040, it's 20-year debt. So I wanted to take it out as far as the debt. Then you have 3% and you have 5%. We're using 3% is what we're using for projection, but I think 5% is too much, even though in our area commercially, which is who pays most of the property tax, 70%, right? It's been growing greater than 3% on average, but when you take everything in, being very moderate, 3% probably is a good number to look for. It's a projection, right? All projections are as good as the information you have, but 3% seems to be reasonable based on past history. Next slide. So, if you look at today, and these are important, really, not so much what is the mill levy, but to show you that today, 77% of our mill levy goes to general operations, right? Police, fire, everything we pay for in the general operations, and a little less than a quarter goes to interest and sinking of debt service. It is not unusual, and and I would say even common, that mixture can be 65-35. So there's some gap there, right? So you could have the same mill levy and have the INS higher and M&O lower, or you could have one lower and one stay the same, and it's going to change your percentages. But just understand the percentages. And in our projections, we use 96% collections of current year taxes. We generally exceed 97%. So when we build our budget, we use 97%. And even in this time that we're in right now, we haven't seen that change. So we don't have large-scale people not paying their taxes, because the vast majority of our taxes are paid by the commercial entities. Right? And for the most part in this community, our commercial entities continue to operate through this time of COVID. All right, so you can kind of see the numbers. So where did we sit today? So this is what we paid in debt. I know there's a comment about outstanding debt, all right, but outstanding debt is spread out over a number of years. So you have to look at that, and I don't disagree that the numbers, but what does it cost us for that debt every single year? So you can see in 2020, the year we're in, this is all budget year, we're about $1.1 million, a little over that. That's what we pay in debt service today. About 2/3 of that is funded with property taxes, and about 1/3 of that is coming from other sources. That can be pilots, that can be, the sewer fund has to pay its own way, so right, the sewer fund transfers money to the debt service fund to pay for its sewer debt, because sewer should pay for all its debt. There's road money that comes in from the special highway fund to help pay debt, so we set that every year during the budget, but you can see that breakdown. 2021, it goes down just a little bit, and then starting in 2022, you drop down quite a bit, because you're paying off some high dollar debts that were out there. And then you can see it fall and where it goes. Now this assumes you're not issuing any new debt, and I don't think it's reasonable to assume you'll never issue any debt over the next 20 years.
Does that include all of our, like, Riverview Crossroads and?
This includes all outstanding debt we have today. It does not include the debt we will have to issue for Riverview Crossroads, but I'm going to show you that. All right. That's what this slide is. So what this shows you, and this is a little modified from what you saw before, because I asked if we had some time. So I had Dusty Avey, who is our financial advisor, with they got a new name. It used to be called Piper Jaffray. I think now it's called Piper Sandlin and Company. And I said, what we need is about $3.6 million to pay for two things, and I'll break those down. Give me a debt statement. Tell me what that debt's going to cost me if we start our first payment in 2022, carried out going forward. And that's what you see there. So what you see is, even with new debt, the amount we're paying for debt service will go down. We will pay less in debt in 2022 than we pay today.
But that doesn't show the Riverview.
It does include Riverview Crossroads.
That
number
this
includes
number shows the Riverview.
It includes Riverview Crossroads, and it includes money that we would use for town center, and I'll break that down really. Yes, this is debt for Riverview. So we can go to the next slide and we come back. So we're assuming in those numbers, that chart, that we would issue $3.6 million in 2020. $2.3 million of that's for Riverview Crossroads. As of today, everything we know, we believe that's probably a pretty solid number because we're through office checks. The only thing that's still outstanding is some of the right-of-way. $2.3 million is what we will need in order to write a check to KDOT to build that project. That also takes into effect the money, we already have money in the bank for that project, the $500,000. So we'll spend all of that. We'll have to issue it. The $1.3 million does really three things. a portion, about 500 to 600,000, 600,000 is used to pay for the GMP. And you might ask, well, why 600,000 versus 759,000? Because the portion of the project that is not public safety, we have to pay for a method, in this case, other than bonds. Right? And so we would use economic development funds, for which we have the funds available to pay for that portion. The relocation of utilities, which includes relocating the electric and relocating the sewer. Combined, that is about $500,000. And then stormwater improvements. So the stormwater improvements would put into place the basic infrastructure for stormwater for the site and offsite. So the site itself would be ready with all the utilities, because the other utilities are along the site, so there's water available, there's telephone available, there's these things. The sewer and the electric hodgepodge all through the site. Right? When it was built, they were like, hey, we need a connection over here, so we put a sewer well, we need one over there, and we built something put it over there. So it's all through the site. Some of it's not, doesn't even appear to be in a site of utility. So that's why we have engineers. And so I say that, and the very last part is, with all that information, using 3% annual growth, the information I provided to you before, in 2022, just on the INS side, I think you could probably do it on the M&O side, it's a policy decision, so I don't want to get up here and say thou shalt, right? But you can lower your debt service. If you did nothing else, put this added debt on there, and you wanted to lower your debt service rate, I would probably advise against it on that side. You could lower it probably 2 to 4 mils. You could lower it 2 for sure. If you run that, you could say 4, right? Now, think about this. As you are talking about mill levy, and you're talking about that growth in value, I know that the other part of that is the M&O side, right? The maintenance and operation. If you can lower it in one side, you can lower it on the other. The real question, which I say every year at budget time, is not so much what's the mill levy rate, it's what is it that you're trying to fund? What are the priorities of the city? I mean, if you come in and say, we want to add 500 acres of new park land and have brand new baseball fields and soccer fields and football fields, and by the way, can you lower the mill levy by 4 mils? The answer is no. Right? Not to say we can't make improvements, because I think we still need it. But fundamentally, what I want to say here is, entering into the GMP is not paid for out of M&O, out of what it costs to put firemen on the street, policemen on the street, pay the bills, get people paid their paychecks, all those things that we do every single day. Patch potholes, it doesn't impact it. No matter what decision is made, it won't impact it. So I really want to wrap up with this, and I'm happy to answer questions. We do have representatives from KBS, the architect and the engineer, so if there's technical questions you'd like to ask, we can. But if you put the next slide up, one more. So I put this beautiful street sign, right? So we're really at this place of decision. And I'd say if you go to the left and basically go back. So go to the left and where we're at. Right? You're kind of, I hate to say the dead end, right? I mean, you're not changing anything. If we go to the right, then we're looking at what do we do, how's the future look? And so I want to talk about the right side here and bring up these last couple of slides. So again, what is it we're doing? We're trying to come back, the GMP will provide to this council the answer to the question, how much will it cost to build a facility? And with that information, we can make decisions on all the financial related matters. I don't think there's any doubt, there shouldn't be any doubt, that the facilities we have don't serve the community or our staff the way it should. when we have fire, go spend the night at the fire station, sleeping in the couch in the chair, or, we have police cars that we have to park under awnings, keep them getting hit by hail. You got roofs that leaks, 50-year-old thing. We can fix all this stuff, we can just spend money, fix and put put new stuff on old stuff. And, we've had all these discussions, so that's where we're at. So what this does, it will bring to you at the end of this year and say, this is what it would cost to do this phase of this project. And you can say, that's wonderful. The economy is horrible. We don't want to do that. The economy is great. We don't want to do that. We want to do it. We don't care. I think this group has always made logical decisions. So you're going to look at the facts. We're going to make decisions. But the information you don't have is, and the information I can't give you with certainty, and these guys can't give you with certainty, is what's it cost. I can say, you know what, 40,000 square foot building, $250 a square foot. Okay, you're good with that? We'll go build a building for $250 a square foot. The question is, do we need a building that's worth $250 a square foot? I don't know. Some parts of the building cost more, some cost less. I mean, right? What do you want in a council room? I mean, I've seen quite elaborate, I'm sure you have, or is painted walls and something of this nature acceptable? That's not bad or good, it's just, we can't tell you the answers to those questions without this next level of thing, and then you can make a decision. So, it's still broken, go back please, it's still broken into basically 3 phases. So when they're 30% complete with this program, we're going to come back to the city council, and you're going to see, and they'll have a cost at that point. We said, based on 30% complete plans, this is what we believe the cost is. And that's our point to input and say, hey, wait a second, that's too high, or why is this, or no, we don't really want marble countertops, we're okay with formica countertops, or whatever those input. We come back at 60%, we come back at 90%. What we did to help deal with the cost a little bit on the front end is the plans, instead of being 90% complete, in other words, they're really ready to completely bid, we're going to bring them in at 80% complete. So there'll still be a few items that may be outstanding. So finishes, mainly those types of things, right? I mean, the structure will still be the structure of the walls and things, but it'll be some of the finishes that we would have come in before with it more set. We'll have allowance. So if we say, hey, we're going to put carpet in at $14 a square yard, we'll have that built in, but I won't be able to tell you it's going to be blue carpet of, from Weber's carpet for da-da-da-da. So we won't have the specifics, but we'll have the estimated cost. That'll be done at basically the end of the year. The assumption would be then we can look at it as a 2021 or 2022 project for construction. It's about a year-long project. That's really where we're at. Again, I know I've heard, well, I guess there's one more slide I forgot about. Other things we have to do, I've already talked about it. For the private portion, we need to go into a development agreement. There's no reason to go into a development agreement if we're not going to move forward with this phase. We will have a geo bond sale. I mean, there's no ifs about that. I mean, short of not building the road and losing $3 million in federal funds. So we will have a bond sale. We have that bond sale basically slated to happen in September. So we'll be back before the council in August for the resolutions. We go to the bond sale, we close in September, and it would fund in October. That would provide the funds necessary for the Riverview project. But we do have some cost up there before KDOT, so we have some clearing, some items like that that we have to do before the project's let. So we have to do that. The money in this bond would relocate all of our utilities, which basically gets the whole site prepared for whatever purposes. And I think the other thing, if you remember, when we were looking at our parks plan about acquiring this part down here, and we hired, the engineers to do that. I mean, all of this is set to connect, right? So it's not like, we're not just building a building, and I know these guys behind me, I've said this a million times. If all I need to do is build a building, I don't need all this process. Go out, I want a square building, I need this much square foot, I've got a piece of property to build me a building. That is not what this is about. This is about, do we want to rebuild the heart of this community, here where we're at, for our citizens and people to have a place. We need the building to function, but it's not the key. But to know that, I gotta know what it costs. And I can't answer your broader questions of fiscal impacts if I'm just making yes. I can tell you $10 million here it is, $12 million here it is, $14 million here. We've done that, right? That really doesn't help you make a decision. With that, I will end, again, the two discussion or action items that those with would be to enter into the GMP. Again, the amount is now at $759. I want to make it clear, that doesn't mean that the price just went down. They're not going to do work, but some of that work will be at a later date. So we pushed it to the future. Now, that puts risk on their side, because at the end of the GMP, we may say, this is as far as we're going. And that's the risk that they take, and I understand that. And if you do that, we would like to have the resolution authorizing reimbursement. So any monies we do spend can be reimbursed if it's allowed to be reimbursed. Right. So if we use money from other parts, we talked about the money that's set aside for the public works facility. We have to use that until the bonds are sold. It just reimburses us, right? It doesn't change anything. It's just a reimbursement. It's mainly a protection.
I had
So,
a couple of questions,
I'm
if
sure.
that's okay. One of the concerns, and you talked about the property taxes, and that's not affecting our property taxes, especially because most of it comes from the industrial part,
Right.
which is fantastic for our city, that we're not affected as much. Sales tax, though, and casino revenues might come into play. I was wondering if you could just clarify that, if this drop in sales tax from the last few months or lack of casino revenue from the last few months would impact this budget at all.
No, it would not impact us. Now, we are anticipating, right, that overall casino revenues probably going to be down for this current year, so that's 2020, about $75,000. That's our guess, right? We're assuming 2.5 months. What we know is the month of March, so March operations, we get the money in May, we collected about $17,000, which is about 50%. We're assuming it'll be $0 for the month of April, and we're kind of assuming $0 for the month of May, even though they were open for a short period of time. Sales tax, I don't know that we have much update, but it's about a 10% reduction. Otherwise, annually. But we're not proposing any sales tax money or casino money to pay for this, because that all is in the general fund budget.
Okay, that helps.
So I just want to answer both of those questions. So, no, regardless of what happens with those, would not impact this, because these dollars can't be switched over to the operating side. Debt is debt.
And I was wondering, on the chart that you had where it showed the blue edition of
Yeah,
debt,
let's go back. Yeah.
is
That's,
the blue section, does any of that include estimates on what this will cost, or will that make those blue bars go up even further?
it does not include the estimate for the construction of the building,
Okay.
but it does include it includes the $3.6 million bond issue that we would do in 2020 with the first payments due in 2022. Actually, in 2021, what it does is it has capitalized interest, which is fairly typical. So generally, the first payment or two is you build the interest into the actual bond sale. And now, the bond sale is more than, let me rephrase. The bond sale is actually more than 3.6 million. The 3.6 million is what we have to net. So I have to look at the overall bond number. So just make sure I'm clear. The overall bond on the base would be about 4.8 million, because you have to net out your cost, right? Your cost issue debt. So this includes, this gets us $3.6 million net financing for this project.
Toward the project.
But it doesn't include any future debt issuance, whether it would be for buildings, or whether it would be for parks, or whether it would be for roads, or any other thing. I assume somewhere in here, you're probably gonna have other issues. I mean, I would say the goal generally is we're trying to keep this line relatively flat. That the goal should be not to let it, if we can keep our debt servicing at around that $1 million range. As we get larger, as things go, it's probably gonna go up, but as a percentage, right? What we don't want, which is what, not to go back too far, but what got us in trouble in '06, into the financial mess, is they went out and issued a lot of debt in a short period of time with no financing plans. They cut their revenues. They eliminated sewer revenues, for example. They issued sewer debt. And they put it all in interest-only payments for a long time. Years. 3 or 4 years of interest-only payment, and it's just like your house, right? I mean, these numbers are bigger, but it's no different. You can go out and buy $1 million house and say, I'm only going to pay payments of $1,500 a month. Until you get to year 20, and somebody says, but now you owe me $3 million. That's what we don't want to do. And you don't want our debt service overall spiking and falling, right? I mean, the more level you can keep it, the better, especially when you're looking at the bond rating agencies. Remember, we have a AA- bond rating. Put that up against most any city in the state. It's as good or better than any city in Wyandotte County, and it's as good as most cities in Johnson County if you want to use them, right? Compared to a lot of others, right? I mean, a AA- bond rating, I think it's AA- is an excellent bond rating. Remember the AA's. AAA's top. And there's very few cities that have AAA bond. Buy insurance to get it, but for the most part, you don't. That, to me, that's the goal. You don't want to be without. I mean, some people say be without debt. You might as well say you don't want to invest in your community. I mean, it has to be reasonable. It has to be affordable. It has to be planned for. So you don't want to wait and then 1 year go, okay, let's go issue a whole bunch of debt for 15 different projects because we have 4 roads that have failed and we have to go fix them all at once. We'd rather $2.5 million, a few years, 2.5, 3 million, a few years, 2.5, 3 million. So that's what the concept is.
I'll say last question, but the
No.
last one right now is, since phase 3 is primarily private development,
Yes.
would it be beneficial to us to look at planning and paying for phase 1 and 2, and then just the plot side of 3, and let that expense go to the future developer instead of us taking it on personally?
I'm not sure I totally understand, but I think so. Again, everything's kind of contingent upon. It's contingent upon moving. I hate to keep picking on our friends at the fire department, but it's kind of contingent upon them moving and having. I mean, where do you? I mean, if you could tear this down tomorrow and build, it would be great.
I said the right phase. So if we're focusing on 1 and 2,
Right, you're right.
then we could move the fire department to 1,
Mhm.
and then still we have the current building. And I may, granted, I'm just kind of spitballing here, but would it be financially maybe a good idea to just work on the parking area or the ground level of phase 3 and then leave that blueprint, development and expense potentially to partnering with that private developer?
Okay, so we're not, and correct me, Dave or whoever, so this is what we're focusing on for the most part with the GMP, with the exception of, there's a sewer line that comes through like this,
I see.
so we have to relocate that. And there's power that comes through like this that we have to relocate. So some of that takes some engineering. And we're creating some stormwater here
Okay.
that we at least want to plan for. We're not trying to, we're not talking about developing the parking and things, because if anything, potentially, this building could get built, this one or this one, do you remember that?
First one.
This
No,
one?
that one.
Because it's the only spot that we don't have something on today. Because the police station sits here and the rest of our buildings sit here. So we can't do much there anyways, but the utilities, and that's really improving.
So the cost that we're looking at is primarily just the planning for phase one. It doesn't, we'll have to come to another cost for phase
Yeah,
two or three.
the GMP will tell you, what does this cost? It's not intended.
We don't involve any financing in that.
Yeah, it's not intended to give you, what will these buildings cost, what is all that? I mean, there may be some assumptions on these parking costs and things, but we're not designing or paying for these designs, and we're not doing anything with this. We're basically, it's this red line, that direction is what this GMP deals with a little bit of, we have to assume some site planning for the whole site, right? So there's some engineering, but the vast majority of the cost is architecture-related cost to this.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for clarifying.
Yeah, no.
Because I was thinking of,
No, no,
as an overall project.
So ultimately, it's the private developer, right? So the assumptions, and this is where the development agreement is, that middle purple part there, we own the land, right? That's our land. We will either sell it, and maybe as an incentive, we say we're gonna sell it for $1, right? So we're gonna sell it, or are we gonna go make pad-ready sites and sell pad-ready sites? Are we gonna pay to demo the building, or are we gonna put that cost to the developer to demo the building? We don't have those answers yet. That's what the development agreement will do. But the GMP isn't designing, it's taking this concept in play, so we're assuming this is the concept, because I don't want to move a sewer line and then find out that I needed the sewer line on the other side, or I put a power line somewhere. But we're not doing, we're not planning on the every sewer connection, the water connection, designing all of this. We know there's water there. Each of those buildings that have to have water, they have to have sewer. When we relocate the sewer line, are we going to size it to assume that, okay, there's a 3-story building with this many square feet and this many occupancies? Sure. But, that's, are you putting in an 8-inch line, which is the minimum, or you bump it to a 10-inch line? That's what we're talking about.
And that's what I was talking about including.
Yeah.
So the private part's not in there anyway, but
Right.
it doesn't matter. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, I guess, these are the discussion, the reason, the reason why I think this is an important piece is to help answer the real questions, the dollars and cent questions. We've got, we can give you a pretty good estimate, right? We can say, okay, it's the parking lot's gonna cost $1 million because it's, X number of dollars per parking space. And we know the court day needs, when's our max day? Court date, council day. But I'd ask the question is, are we gonna put a courtroom in here? Are we gonna continue to use the community room? Or is it better to have it over here because we can use the community room for better uses? Right, a little bit of that still, we're assuming there's a council room, we're assuming there's a training room that could also be used for community purposes. But as we go through those 3 steps, we may make the decision that the cost of those extras, if you want to call them that, don't make sense. Or we're building in a certain amount of growth in staff, as we get into this a little deeper with real architectural numbers, we very well may say, how quick do we really think we're gonna have a full-time planner and a full-time engineer on staff? Right? Do we really want the public works director at City Hall, or will we put the public works director at the public works facility? I mean, we're making assumptions right now, but as we get into real dollars, and cents, we may want to put the police chief in another city, I don't know, so. You know. But that's why, and again, I know I'm coming to you, can you delay this 6 weeks, 6 months, 6 years? Sure, where are you gonna be? You're gonna be right where you're at, with no planning, and just another 6 months, a year, 2 years, 6 years, farther behind where we're at.
So I made some notes.
Sure.
I thought you were stopping, sorry. I made some notes, and what my notes say is under debt.
Yeah.
Because when you look at the additional blue on that chart,
Yep.
it's right up there to that $1 million where we just said that we wanted to be. And that's not with any additional debt at all that we know we're going to need. Roads, public works, this doesn't address the public works buying of land, a building.
It's already built in. We already have money to buy the land for public works. You already issued.
Where's that at? Where are we buying that at?
It's already built into the existing debt service.
We know how much we're paying for the land already?
We know how much money we issued debt for. It was in the 2019 bond orders.
How much is that?
412,000 set aside.
And it's in, okay, all right, we'll leave public works out.
Okay.
As the things develop up north, you know, fire department, police department, again, maybe up north as things are up north. So I'm just saying, what I'm saying is, I'm not specific, but some of those things are. Roads, and the public works building. I mean, if we got the money to buy the ground, it sounds like we budgeted that. I mean, we're talking about a building.
Sure.
But one of the things that I wanted, that we kind of just gloss over the mill levy, and I know that it is, I know how much goes to each of the, where the mill levy goes. But when you are, and I have talked to developers, people of interest that are have interest in coming into Edwardsville, and when they see a high mill levy, it turns them off. I mean, it just doesn't. I'm sure that, you know, you've probably had that. When they see that number, I mean, it's a turnoff, and it. So I'm in favor of seeing the mill levy go down 20, 30, to make our mill, to make it more appealing for some. You drop our mill levy down 20, and you've got developers knocking on our door saying, where can we build? Because they see it. So the mill levy is more than just what we're paying. It has an effect on outside developers coming in too. Just that they look at it and maybe not even give us the time of day because they go, wow, look at that mill levy. It's out of hand. So that's what I had to say.
For clarification on the property acquisition, is that on page 3 of the audit?
Before I say yes, I'm going to sure. But I believe it.
Capital project funds?
Capital project funds, right, the one where it says property acquisitions, there's currently, which is what came in at the 433, 412, and at the end of 2019, there's 43, 412. At the end of 430, that's grown by a couple $1,000 up to about 435 interest. We do it quarterly. We take the interest earnings in the capital improvement program because it's in a single bank account, and it's then allocated to the projects by their balance once a quarter. So any interest earnings go back to the projects. until the project has been funded. And it's, you know, you have town center shows, end of 2019, you had about $400,000. As of 4/30, we have about 353,600, and I know we have an outstanding final bill of about 28,000. So roughly we have $325,000 in that fund, that project, which would be applied against, right, and go against that 750.
Can the new building be designed in a way that it comes in phases as well? So for instance, and I know the cost ends up being more,
Right.
but I'm looking at cash outlay and debt. Can it be built in that we have phase one of the building is an appropriate fire department with the sleeping facilities, the bays, everything needed for that fire department, and do that?
We have looked at that. I mean, yeah. The fundamental answer is yes. You are correct. At the end of the day, it costs more money. And some of your infrastructure costs are still the same. Right. I mean, the sewer line relocation, power line relocation.
So per square foot, the first part's gonna be loaded up with some of those costs, which would lower the square footage cost, assuming all things equal.
Right.
Phase two or phase three or whatever.
And then some of your costs, we ran some numbers, I don't know if you remember. It was 15 to 20%, give or take, I think,
15
more.
15 or 20% more in the overall
Couple
cost.
$1 million by timing it out.
But that, but.
It spreads the time, I mean, it does spread the timing out over, you know, you would have to do probably 3 bond issues. I mean, if you're gonna do it that way. We looked at even, you build a shell of a building and only occupy part of it, but then you're getting into, right, big portion of the cost are in the shell, you know, the roof structure, the steel structure, the foundation structures, the utilities, all the things you have to put in. That was, you know, that's kind of why we finally said this is probably financially, it was, yes, it spreads it out, but from efficiency of dollars, it's probably not your best money. And you're pushing it out probably, you know, 9, 10 years.
Pushing what out?
Well, I mean, if you did it and you were gonna do it like, I mean, I guess it depends how quickly you did it. If you're gonna do it all in 2 or 3 year period, then you probably, there's not much benefit to not just do it once. So if you're gonna do it one phase in 3 years, another phase in 3 years, another phase in 3 years, and you can't do the private development until all of that's done. Effectively, because we're in the middle of the what? I mean, if there was a way, you know, if there was a vacant building sitting somewhere where you could relocate and do it, you know, it probably changes the dynamics, but that's not really an option we have that I'm aware of.
Is it page 29 of our audit? I think you guys want to look at that. I'm just, for me, is that where the 430? Is that what that is?
That is that particular project, yeah. So every project, we give a project number. So when the bonds were issued, again, and I don't have right off the top of my head, well, roughly, we had about $4 million in bond proceeds. If you go to page 26. So you had, so disregard the interest. So you had a little over $4 million in bond proceeds from the 2019. You sent 1.215 million to pay off the temporary note, to pay for the LTC. And then we transferred out, then you had issuance costs of a little over 100,000. And then that 2.8 million is, there's a little part of that, but the vast majority of that is transferred to one of those projects. And how that was determined is within the bond ordinance that we approved. So before you can go issue bonds, we had to adopt a project authorization. This council adopted a project authorization. And in the project authorization, we had to say what the projects were and estimate what the bonds were. You remember those particular bonds, which is somewhat unusual. We got a very large premium on those. Normally, you'll get a premium, say 10 or 15,000, or discounts. You'll have some. You remember we had, and I don't remember what it was, but I mean it was large, 100,000 or so. So what we had to do was we lowered the actual face value of the bonds and had to allocate those extra proceeds to each of the projects. So every project has its own balance for tracking purposes, even though when we issued bonds, the 2019 bonds, it was for three purposes. Refinancing the temporary notes, which is the 1.2, it's done, right? It was just one check out, pay them off, and you're paying debt service. There's no project because you've already done the project. That was the LTC sewer. And then you had the projects that we outlined that was allocated according to what we initially did. So if we said we were going to put 400,000 to the public works acquisition of property, but because of the premium, we ended up with an extra, whatever that was,
30,000.
an extra $30,000. Just like on the town center, we initially estimated it at 500,000, and so we put 540,000. It was allocated by that. I mean, it had to be allocated that way.
I know that in this, the whole purpose is to get an estimate on how much it'll cost, but it would be helpful to me to even have like an idea of where that blue bar is gonna end up if we go through and build it. Because that would potentially tie our hands later for doing future projects. And so I know that we don't have a way to really get a specific estimate there, but before we bite off all that blue bar, I'd kind of like to have an idea of where we would end up if we decide to do the full project, to know the entirety of, before we spend 800,
Right.
where are we gonna be with this whole thing? Because that's, I mean, I love that it's moving down,
Right.
but I'm just thinking potentially that could spike up pretty quick depending on where we end up in this. And I don't wanna spend that much money
Right.
before,
No.
and so that's
Wait,
where
now,
I'm
here's what we
conflicted.
can do, I mean, right, if so, the GMP, even on the thing you have, right, we're using a $10 million estimate, right? I mean, you can ask for the architects, and you're gonna get some number, probably pretty broad, but for just the sake of what we've been putting together, that's kind of been our target number for the construction of the building, right? Building the building afterwards.
Not FF&E, not just.
Cool, I want to say that's correct, no FF&E in that number, right? Right. Okay, make sure I didn't want to tell you yes or no. That happened over in Shawnee, so,
Hang on just a
we,
second. FF&E.
furniture, fixtures, and
Finish.
equipment,
Furniture fixtures.
desk, chairs, and stuff like that. So we can put together, I mean, I can take this same thing and put together, so those numbers. Right? Let's just say the building is $10 million and we're gonna have 15% for FF&E. I don't know if that's a fair number, not a high number, low, high.
That's a little high.
Little high. What's a percentage? They call it 12%. So we'll take 12% for FF&E, right? I could put together and show you the debt service schedule. I could show you what the mill levy impact, using the same base, not just for debt, because you can do it for M&O, because maybe the part I haven't done, which I can do, is understand when we set the mill levy, I know it goes for county, we go through all that BS, but, for effectively, when we come to you with the budget, we say, well, we tell the counties, we need this much money in tax dollars for operations, and we need this much money in tax dollars for debt. Really, the only number that matters is combined, right? I mean, within reason, right? I worked at one city, and I walked in, the mill levy would be the equivalent of where it's 182 here, it was 999, to give you an idea. And out of that, 80% was debt. That's crazy. Right? But what you may find is your mill levy overall could even go down, but the percentages, that's why I brought that up earlier, right? I think we have the ability for the percentage allocated to debt can be higher than what it is and reduce the amount allocated to the M&O or to the operations, regardless of where the mill levy is at, right? So your mill levy could, you could have a higher or lower mill levy and those percentages be different because it's.
But do you have the wiggle room in your operations budget to do
Well,
that?
that's the question, right? Could we cut our mill levy by 20 mills? Absolutely not. Could we? All you gotta do is vote on it, but you won't have services.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, like, I know we can move the operations budget, ideally, but can't do financially. Like, it seems like we generally we're trying to make sure our people are taken care of in their salaries and things like that, and I don't wanna.
That's a challenge, yeah.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that what's happening, why somewhat the timing is good, is the decisions made 12, 10, 8 years ago related to tax, tax abatements and those IRBs for a good portion of our industrial park come off between 2020 and 2025. Big chunk. That's why that number, if you go, I don't know where Zach's at, but show me the graph that has the line. So, right, you see 2020, 2021, and then all of a sudden you see that really, right? That's because a lot of things are coming off of tax abatements and going back on the tax rate.
I guess it would help me then to see that bar like this and the $10 million
Right.
incorporated into that bar graph, so I can see that scenario, so that when we're looking at, gosh, we've got to fix these roads in 5 years and things like that, I just don't want our hands to be tied and say, well, we got to raise the mill levy because I don't think any of us are in a position where we want to do that. It's hard because I love this project. I love improving the heart of our community. I think it's so important. And just for me, I just need to get over that hurdle with a little bit more information and making sure that we're big picture long-run scenario.
Could we see it sometime, on that graph at $12 million? Because that's probably, $10 million building with 12% FF&E is going to be, where it's a $12 million project.
We'll put
12
some
to
of that
13 million.
together.
That'd be so much.
So if I can summarize, so I want to use your time wisely and ours, and so the concept that's put together of how we get there overall seems to be a general concept is acceptable. It's the financing and how that impacts short and long-term financial decisions is the crux of the issue that we really need to focus on. And we can do that.
For me personally, that's one part.
Right.
Okay.
The other part is, there are an awful lot of balls in the air right now. And you hear the talk about the relapse or whatever the proper term is, and are we looking at another 3-month government shutdown where the medical people decide that we all need to to stay in place and we can't have an economy for another 3 months. Those, I personally, we've got an election coming that it's going to be quite controversial. And so I think for me, just speak for me personally, I love the concept. And I believe we need it. There's no doubt we need it. And our citizens deserve a nice quality city facility to take care of the police and the fire and the courts and all the other stuff. I don't think we're even arguing that, and I don't see any resistance to that. I think there's just so much emotionally and financially that is up in the air right now that we can't. Maybe in a few months we'd have a little better vision of what we've got going on and what we could look at in the future. Because I think, at least in the back of my mind, 2008 sits there where the property values dipped, and it took us, what, 3 or 4 years to come back out of that. And so we had to make some really hard decisions. And to me, with all the craziness that's going on in the world, in the United States right now, I just don't feel comfortable making this large of a decision. And I may feel comfortable in 3 months, but I just don't today feel comfortable. But I think it's obviously needed. It's obviously a good plan for the city, and I think in that 3 months we may have some great discussion about some alternatives. Like when I was watching that and looking at all the development outside of that. What if we sold the whole property and moved up on 32? And so that way we could actually be more accessible to any development that's up on the north end, as well as on the south end of town. So I'm not sure we turned over all the stuff.
Well, we did look at that, if you recall, and the reason we didn't take that is we don't think that there's probably enough. I think it's going to take a public-private partnership. I don't know that this property just on its own develops completely opposite private. I think that was kind of the general feelings that we had.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think anybody up here is opposed to this at all. In concept and the strategy, it's just, most of us personally are kind of sitting and waiting, we're not making big financial decisions, we're just kind of hanging around and see whether we're going to have a little bit of money to throw at something or whether we need to have it because we shut down for another freaking 3 months. So that's my input.
Well, I echo what you just said, and I had brought this up the last time, that, it's hard when we have folks that, and I thank God right now that I'm not one of those that's affected that way. I'm working but there's folks that aren't. And it's hard to set up here and make that kind of a commitment right now, knowing that we have those citizens that are out there. And I mean, I understand, I get it, I know what you're saying. And, we ran and got elected up here to make those decisions, hard decisions. And I too don't think that, I love the idea, the thought of it. I got some things that I would probably like to discuss about it because of just past what we've seen in here and what hasn't worked in the past. So what's going to change that is what I think about some things. But I don't know that the 3 months is sufficient. I think it's a January 1st deal for me. The election's over. We've started 2021, and that's where I'm at.
As I understand the comments from at least 2 or 3 of the council members, that that we want to put this on hold, and my feeling is that I think to get a better view even then, at some point, you're gonna have to do the GMP. For me, I don't see any issue with moving forward on that, because only then can we get exact figures of estimates. Right now, we're as I call them, we're looking at swag estimates. And so if we're gonna move this even into January, I don't see a big issue with that, but I would really like to see us move forward on at least that part. Now, that's up to the council, that's just, I'm just expressing my opinion, and I don't vote.
So let me maybe make a suggestion that we bring this back post-budget, right? We're gonna be
Okay.
in budget discussions from now through August, all right, at least. That should hopefully give you a better, have a solid understanding of 2021 budget, right? We can still have some, if we need to have some of these financial discussions during the budget process workshops as far as what would happen regardless of what you issue debt. You know, if we issued debt $2.5 million every third year, or we issued $10 million in 2022, we can prepare scenarios that give you that information and do that kind of post-budget, so we can have those decisions, which then would lead into, you know, whether it's late fall or you know, sometime thereabouts, that we could have this more detailed discussion again about this particular piece, right? Because we're not going to be any place different relative to this component today or 6 months. I mean, right? I mean, as far as the
Right.
structure of it, those kind of things, right? And I understand. I think that we can put together those financial pieces. We'll have our discussions with the normal budget. We can even look at these impacts in the normal budget, right? You know, probably the biggest thing that we don't know, which we don't know even now, is, you know, what happens if we have some significant capital. You know, I mean, that's like, you know, 2 of these air conditioners go out. I mean, we know we want them on for 50 years, right? At some point they're going to break. We just hope that it's right when it's 96 degrees. You know, and you go out and you spend, you know, I mean, I realize pennies in comparison, but now you're spending this and you're putting a roof on and stuff. At some point, it's like any other thing. How long do you do it?
I got 25 words or less. I came in here prepared to make a motion to accept this because I think we need to get started on it as soon as we can. I don't see that this is impacting the taxpayers because the money's already there for it. So from what I'm hearing from here and from some of the emails I've gotten at home and everything, maybe it would be better to hold off on it. I don't think it's wise to hold off on it because I think we'd better to have the plans in place so you could jump on top of it, you know, when it comes available. But I'm here, Councilman. If I made the motion, it would fail anyway. So I'm inclined to agree with the mayor that we should do it now for our citizens and for our employees and for just for the general outlook of the city, you know, for the city to be improved that way, because there's things that are going to have to be happening around here before too long. So I have to agree with the majority of the council. I think right now maybe delay it until the budget presentation and all that. So regretfully, I'm not going to make the motion that I made last time and withdrew because of the same kind of confidence. Anyway, that's where I stand. I'm kind of stuck between.
Is that why we're running the meeting too long?
I think we're,
Let the Peter down, everybody gotta go.
Mayor, I believe, I mean, we have our directions.
Yeah.
Our directions are going, I'll just summarize it.
Yeah, there will
We
not
will
be a
come back,
motion on
we'll
this.
come back,
this
post
item,
the
so-
budget. Potentially during the budget, we may have some of these long-range discussions about debt servicing and mill levy, which we have anyway. And then after the budget, we can, sometime in that fourth quarter, reassess all of these discussions. Is that fair?
Would it be possible to have that graph earlier than that,
Prior,
with like a
yeah.
12?
Oh, yeah,
Yeah, it's a $12 million,
$12
I
million.
mean, it's a $12 million project.
Yeah, no, I
That's
can do
what it
that.
is.
But I'm just saying, we're moving into budget discussions anyway.
No,
So
yeah.
it'd be best just to incorporate it because we'll be talking, we gotta talk about debt service anyways. Now, again, I'm going to say this because even without, so take this decision out, we still have to issue somewhere around, we have to have net $2.3 million issued this year. There's not a if on that piece.
And that's the blue line.
Well, that's
included
all of
the-
it. This was a net of three, go to the blue, please. That's a net of 3.6 million, so the blue line will go down. But we have to issue debt in this current year. Right,
We know we signed up for that.
Yeah.
We did that.
right. So and we'll re-update this before we do, but we'll be back on August 24th with that'll be the project authorization, where we authorize, and unless there's some other project out there, we'll probably just limit it to that road project, because we have dollars in 2019 to do that, right? I mean, sometimes packaging things, right? I mean, quite honestly, under about $4 or $5 million for cost of issuance is the same. Give or take. I mean, there's some cost that goes by the dollar amount, but your bond counsel fees and your financial advisor fees generally are broken into, increments, and the first $5 million generally is out the side.
Okay.
So,
Yeah,
well,
I
I think the last thing that I was gonna just say is that timing couldn't be worse, for this, in my opinion. And with, in a couple months, at the end of August,
All right.
I think what that does for us, it lets us, hopefully we're out of all phases at the state level. People are back to normal. I know it's normal, whatever it is, normal. And we see the casinos generating dollars. And we see where people are saying, you know what? This affected us. We got through it. And now we're back on track. Let's march forward. I think that makes it, for me personally, that makes my comfort level at a place where I'm comfortable. When I see that we have made it through. I mean, we're still in what phase? We're still in a phase.
Phase 3 today.
Phase 3. We're still in a phase.
Under some of
and we're trying to.
Or green or yellow, or I don't know.
I still think it's right. It's right now.
Okay. So Mayor, I don't know if you, I know it's gonna be a long meeting tonight, I think I'll do that.
Yes.
If you wanna go ahead and hit the next item, we could take a break after that, and then if you would like to go ahead and have staff and council make their reports, and we can finish the evening with the executive session.
Okay, why don't we do that? We'll do the executive session after that, like we did last time.
That'll at least let some of the staff go home. I do want to make, if I can have one moment, because I should have done this earlier and I didn't. But I'd like to introduce, where's he at? Dustin Zinger, or Dusty, is our new public works director. I know a few of you all have got a chance to meet him. He's got his best dress shirt on today.
I got better ones, I'm a shirt guy.
He told me he owns a tie, but I don't believe it. But that's okay. So I meant to say something at the beginning of the meeting, and I failed to do that. So
Fine.
I don't know if we all had a chance to meet him, so.
Dusty tie is not required.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
I don't know if y'all have much report to give at staff time, but we'll let him give one.
So he's gonna be on the spot. Okay, let's
Go to the next
let's
item.
do item number 7, which is consider resolution 2020-07 regarding the initiation of eminent domain proceedings for Riverview Crossing.
Okay, so as you know, we are in process of acquisition for the rights-of-way for the Riverview Crossroad projects. Several of those have already been executed. A number of them are in process of being executed. They're all in some discussion levels, right? But we have a time frames that we have to meet. So what the first phase of this does, and I know most people, several people have been through this before, this resolution basically authorizes the city engineer, which in this case is BHC Roads, to prepare the legal descriptions for all property necessary for this project. Which effectively, they have to do at the beginning of the project, but for the formality of it, they have to do that, stamp that, and submit it to the city clerk, that these are the properties that, if necessary, through the eminent domain process, we need to acquire for this project. So you are effectively saying, yes, this is a public project, that it, may be, we have to have the project, we have to have these properties for this project. And so this first resolution basically says we need these lands for this project. We're authorizing the city manager to have the city engineer prepare these, and then they'll do that, submit them to the city clerk. We will then, if necessary, come back to you. Generally, this happens. We will come back in probably 2 weeks with a separate, and this has to get published. Then we come back in about 2 weeks, typically, and say, okay, these are the ones we have not been able to obtain through the normal process. We authorize those to be acquired if necessary through the eminent domain process. We generally continue to negotiate through all of this process, but it keeps us on the time frame, because if we have to initiate eminent domain, then that process takes roughly 60 days, and we have to have our right-of-ways cleared, I think, by about the 1st of October at the latest.
So that's why we would spend the money first to prepare these documents, because there's a cost.
Yeah, but they're technically already prepared. They're a part of the engineering practice, but yes.
So
Some
it's
cities,
not really
there's no real cost.
real cost.
Some cities, what they do, right, they begin when the project ever starts, right, they say, we're gonna go build Riverview Crossroad, and they adopt this resolution. And then 2 weeks later, they adopt an ordinance basically listing every single property for eminent domain. Personally, I think that's just me, right? It makes the process in some respects smoother. I think it sends the wrong signal typically, because what it says is, we're gonna emanate, we're gonna use eminent domain to acquire property. Oh, by the way, would you like to talk about our offer? We try to take the position that we wanna do the offers, we wanna work through this, but we do have a time frame to work in. These are our time frames. I think all of y'all know, in the time I've been here, we've only ever had one property that actually went to the eminent domain process on $15 million worth of property. One property. At the end of the day, we basically, they create a three-panel, three independent appraisers have to come together and appraise a piece of property. They submit that to the court. The court says to the city, here's the appraised value, put this money in the bank, and that's it. In effect, on that particular one, at the end of the day, the amount offered was no more than what was offered. Now, we'll leave names and projects out of that, but it generally isn't to benefit of anybody, and in reality, we bear the cost. The city bears the cost of all acquisition costs, right? So that's not a split cost, that's the cost that the city board bears in that particular account.
If all of the property owners are in agreement in negotiations, does it save us any money or trouble not to do this part of it? Like if everybody's cooperating and wants to go.
I don't know that it doesn't save, I don't think it costs us any money one way or the other. I think to some respects, you have some that are like, I'm just gonna wait. I'm gonna wait. And it just simply says, there is a process, we have these dates we have to meet. We're serious about what we're doing, right? I'll tell you the ones that have, that have been approved. For the most part, they've taken, there have been issues in the offer, because we're limited in eminent domain. So we had to hire an appraiser depending on the value of the property. And so if it's under $10,000, you take the appraisers, what the appraiser has, and you submit it to the property owner as your fair market value. If the first appraiser's value is in excess of 10, you have to hire a second appraiser, we do. And they review that to say, yes, the methodology, the rates, et cetera, are correct. Most of ours are in excess of $10,000. They've already been reviewed by 2 separate appraisers. But occasionally somebody say, you missed the fence that was back here, or we got one, there's a tree. Technically, the tree is really not in the, it's on the edge of where it might be disturbed. They're like, well, what if this happens, would you just, how about removing the tree? Okay. Those are the kind of negotiations.
How many owners are still living on?
We have 11 tracks, I think 4 or 12 tracks, one didn't have, I think 11 tracks, I think 4 are actually signed. Several actually donated parts of the right of way, donated parts of the easements.
So we still have quite a few.
That's nice of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, oh, very nice.
We still have quite a few to go now.
Yeah, but I would say, I think our right-of-way agent is in good constant contact. Some of them are represented by legal counsel, so not that makes it better or worse, but, now that changes the dialogue, right? It does, so, and I'm sure our city attorney can tell you a whole lot more about this stuff than me, but it's really a first step. It doesn't necessarily mean we'll ever get to it. Our goal is, I think this council's been clear, I think I've been clear. That's the last step, and I think we've demonstrated that by actions over the years.
And it's keeps us on track with timing.
Right.
That's the thing. I make a motion to accept resolution 2020-07 regarding the initiation of eminent domain proceedings for the Riverview Crossroad project.
Second.
Been moved and second to adopt resolution 2020-07 regarding initiation of eminent domain proceedings for Riverview Crossing project. Would the clerk please call roll?
KR?
I'm sorry, before I vote, this is just a quick question
Sure.
to clarify. Before we would actually move forward with eminent domain, that would come back to us and they would have an opportunity to speak with us. If like they could come to the meeting.
They could, yes.
Okay,
Okay,
I just wanted to make sure that there was another
we have to be
step.
careful about negotiations in a public
Sure.
meeting. But yes, so the next step would be so there's really a three steps. So the next step would be the ordinance that actually says, and we're authorizing our attorney to file eminent domain on these specific properties.
Okay,
And then, just because you give them that authority does not mean that they have to go down the next day and go file.
Well, and also it may timing wise for sure. We know it's a timing issue, but you know what? It may help with negotiations also. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It would with me. If I was sitting there saying,
Push things along.
you know what? No. Well, you know what? Eminent domain's on, now on the table. Well, maybe so.
yeah, and I hear ya, it's just, eminent domain is like nails on a chalkboard to me.
Yeah.
Every time, especially when it's not something that is like, we're not building a hospital here, you know what I'm saying? And so that's, to me, it's a last ditch, I don't like the idea of strong arming anywhere, any private property. That being said, I feel like with that second step, it's
There absolutely is a
I can
second
go ahead
step.
and vote. I just wanted to make sure.
This does not authorize the city attorney or the attorney, in this case it would be or a law firm, does not authorize him to take any action in any court.
Okay. Should I vote now then?
Well, we're gonna do
Do we
roll
need to
call.
call it again?
No, we've already,
Okay, then yes.
we did the motion and the second, and so you were correct in asking the question then, so you're fine, so we don't need to go through it again.
Thank you.
So roll call.
If we have no other questions, would the clerk please call?
KR?
Yes.
Malott?
Yes.
Driver?
Yes.
Type?
Yes.
Yes.
Now, Mayor, do you want to take a brief
Yes.
break? And then we'll come back and have advisory reports, mayor
Yeah.
council comments.
Yeah.
Then we can do executive session and then based on whatever actions out of the executive
Yeah,
session.
we need to take a break.
But that way, at least some staff members will go home.
And I
Oh, wait a minute.
specifically
They don't have
talked
to,
to
they
my
don't have to go through all the torture we have to.
because this is gonna go a long time.
I thought you said one.
Well, that's a snack.
There was something you said.
That's a snack.
About 13 years ago. That goes saying your feet, and you said, very topic.
You know, my grand home, we got dinner.
Here, I'm hoping that thing.
Here we are.
That's not weeds, but it was at that age. And the actual says, if you're not at the table, you don't have to do it.
Staff reports.
If you're at the table, have a big one.
Executive session.
Because
No, I think it should. I don't know if he does a good job or not. I just like him when we hired
it is
him.
absolutely.
But everybody used the same guy. Well, they used one guy and then this was the partner and that was the only choice.
So mine is so and there are people who
Snack, see, I told you snack.
I know, I haven't been.
They're in mine. Oh, but I mean.
Don't you have an assistant in that
Oh,
sack?
yeah, but there is this, I think legislatively, it built a systematic disconnect. Just as how you.
Well, they have staff.
Oh, you didn't say I can't drink anymore. You don't have enough.
We have two people on there.
I can probably order pizza.
And you have to
It'll be another
How
hour.
long has it been that you and I have been here that we've never seen a CEO come down here and say, I'm here as your county resident? This is it. And it took
It'll be another hour, one of mine.
Yeah,
Not for reports, but for the
No,
rest.
another hour though, right? Probably.
I would expect.
See? Told you.
Oh, put it right here, would you mind? Just put it in there.
Maybe we do need to order pizza so when we have, it can be delivered to in there for when we're in there. We ordered it now.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we're not gonna say.
Coffee,
Well, and again, it's a police perspective. We
I'll buy it.
Three
What?
tiers of their emergency management. Then we
I
have.
kicked the chickens off the
dispatching
roof.
center.
Yes, sir.
Which is a county operation run by the city.
Because they sleep towards
no voice. And you have no say.
Yeah, I kicked them out.
And then you've got the sheriff's office.
I wake them up.
And quite frankly, I was so concerned about the lack of service that I spent an hour last Friday on the phone.
The sheriff, 3.7.
In 2019,
Yep.
they lost
This just designated which
registered
roads,
activities.
portions of main traffic.
300 of them in the city of Edwardsville.
That's not the ordinance.
12,000 plus activities.
So we just randomly
We have a
listed 8 different
supplemental police
traffic.
department in addition.
I mean, these
to
GO
the school
bonds are
police,
related to
the
this
medicine
process.
police, the community.
Well, some of these were already on.
We're out here scrambling.
Okay.
They're going to
I'll say thank you to the mayor.
They're going to domestics. And here we are.
Thank you for sharing my email.
Well, this is from April, so it said, pass from the city designated, so that, these were designated in 2018.
That was a big waste.
I mean, right, I mean, we all use it now.
On ordinance 925.
So those were so, and he actually, I think it was a revelation.
Designated all of
Yes, because he's a part of that system.
Of off the recommendations.
So they just
Then,
know.
the
So when they have
GO
announcements,
bonds
like countywide, kind of, you know, here's our position on, you know,
were
this soda business.
4th Street,
It was just been.
98th Street, Riverview,
And
10th
this
Street.
is not an indictment.
So this is, okay.
And those were several projects.
Just do that on his own. You guys have to-
Well, it started out as a phone call. and he-
Well, he knew his way out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I just kind of went.
I haven't
Take a break.
I just want to
I thought it was-
I don't know where you're
Right. That's not
It's not a redevelopment project.
Well, and what happens?
Well, it really, to tell you, the truth, you know what, I mean, I appreciate you.
Riverview is just not,
Well,
oh, wait, only the issue of that.
You know what I mean?
It really is.
We're gonna have to still $2.3 million. But in 2019, we only allocated
I really need to do more of that.
Absolutely.
Well,
You're trying to like look at other.
Well, yeah, it's more advanced. Yeah.
I think the representation is very rough. You taught me in the early days, it was good to be that, just by saying it. And I said, you're right, yeah. 13 years later, we're still, we're still living.
These came around here.
Well,
That are most
on the front lines.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Project authorization.
You still take record?
In order to issue debt.
I agree.
Next topic, maybe late tonight, executive session.
Yeah.
So I can't go issue debt for, something we will.
Okay, let's get back to business here.
Okay.
I know it. I know it.
We gotta get it memorized.
Okay, now we're going to do advisory reports. And Mike, you're first on the book.
Merry Christmas.
Thank you. If that's it, Zach?
That's all I,
Where's
which I know.
Zach
Mark it on the calendar over there, will you, Chuck?
Was this April 1st?
at? Zach, do you have anything?
Only to, if everybody's interested in coming to the CPPS board meeting this week, it's gonna be on Wednesday, and we're gonna hold it at the cemetery, so it'll help them put the eyes on the facility out there. We'll be talking through a lot of topics. So it'll be, hopefully it's not too hot.
Chief McPhee?
I know it's late, but I think this is important that, given some of the historic times, and Chuck Adams and I were just talking a little bit about, I think if nothing else that we've gotten through the pandemic, is I think the communication has been with the unified government, and those people have been pretty good. I think that may be your experience, and I know Mike has communicated with us on a regular basis, and I thought that, and as a law enforcement community, we really came together in that topic and had regular meetings and things. And though we had luncheons every month and we were good communicators with each other, this was one time we were doing it once a week, and that was a lot more communication than what we had in the past. And I think that piece of it, good leadership, good communication, and a pandemic like that is not a tornado, right? We know how to deal with that, right? That's tangible. We put it in these boxes. There's the event, there's a response, search and recovery, we do all this, and then there's reflection about it, so we can tangibly do that. But the unknown enemy that we had out there, that's pretty tough. No matter where you stand politically and on the concepts of how to stay at home and things like that, I think overall, I thought some solid leadership and some experiences came out of that particular piece of it. Then we have the other piece that we've all seen on the news, it's all around us, and I think, number one, from my perspective, the country was built on some of that kind of stuff, you know, that maybe some reform will come, but I want you to know about the police department that represents you and the citizens here, that we have some of the best ambassadors for our community. They represent really well. They're educated, they're smart people, they do a good job, and they believe in what they're doing, and they want to do it right. So we started our life principles, loyalty, integrity, fairness, and excellence, in early 2008, because I came in November of 2007. So this is ingrained in what we do. It's everything that we do. We found all of our mission, all of our objectives are based on delivering those principles day in and day out. We recently had a promotion process in the last year, and one of that piece is you have to know and write down and recite those life principles, and nobody missed a single one. And there were 6 people compete. So, but not only is it written and on the wall, it happens every day. If you're out there and you see them, you meet our folks, you know they're out there delivering. And here's how I know. Number one, if you remember some years ago, we did a community survey. The police department was rated really high. And we talked about it not just a few meetings ago where we said the police department, because of its appearance, professional, trained, and we had good equipment, good ambassadors, we were left out of this special funding. And that was done purposely because the community felt that we were well funded and the fire department needed more of that attention. And that's exactly how it went down. I think that's a pretty good narrative there. But as part of all of that, so I think that community satisfaction with our department, our good ambassadors, is still there. I think it would rate it just as high. But even more so, what's what's very interesting is we went 5 full years without a citizen complaint. But you might understand that some people worked here, now they don't work here. We may have taken adverse actions, disciplined some employees, and how we do that is through self-policing. We have video review, we have personnel flagging systems that we log into, and we track people and what they're doing, their behavior. We have all kinds of things that maybe you wouldn't even think of that a small department would have. But we have a lot of automation, plus we're small enough to know who's been involved in what and how their approach might have been. And we review every use of force, and we do it in several layers. And so we've done a really good job. And when the expectations are not met, when they don't meet that life principle of excellence, we have to do something. Because we don't want those situations to arise like we've seen. We've had 5 citizen complaints, formal complaints, in 13 years. 5 of them. We had 1 that had something to do with bias-based policing, that the policeman was biased in some way with their interaction, which turned out to be unfounded. And then none of them had anything to do with excessive force. So we've really prided ourselves on living what we do, life. Okay? And so I think that's our message, and we're going to continue to do what we do and be the best ambassadors. I had an officer approach just today saying, what can we do more? How can I be more involved to get the police narrative out there that says, I'm not one of the bad guys, I'm the good guy. That's what I grew up to do this job for, to be one of the good guys. And so we strategize right in my office about maybe more social media, maybe opportunities to introduce the human piece of this uniform. Right? And so I think there's some exciting things coming down the road. I was surprised a younger police officer wants to do that, and they're best at the social media. That's not me. So I'm advocating that they do some of that kind of stuff. You should see that from our department. But I want to tout that because we do self-police. We take care of our own in the sense that if you don't meet the expectations, there will be consequences. But at the same time, we give good reviews to people doing good things every day because that's what we do. So that's my speech on that, but I think there will be some good reform maybe that come out of this, and it sounds like KCK, as we just heard, maybe reforming, their own kind of committees that study what they can do better. And I look forward to seeing what that might result as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Whittam. Welcome back, by the way.
Thank you. The only thing I had, Zach blew up the projector, so we can't really show a picture of it, but people asked what, we did some beautification with the new sign over the fire station and around the flagpole and what the front corner lot had turned into with the hydrant and the fountain and all that. In 2004, the ambulance crew from Mass was murdered up in the North Station. The family had put a tree up there, and over time, the trees died off and everything else, so that is the new family memorial for that EMT and paramedic down there on the corner of that building. When we finally move north, that will be uprooted again and make that move over to that facility as well too. So I know that it was brought about from last year's council meeting, what had happened to the tree and all that. We opted to make a bigger, more permanent memorial over here that is there around the ponds. We've got a few small items to finish up with on the new bench and so forth, but then because of the COVID, we couldn't bring the families in and say, hey, here you go. So we're going to start launching that. Exactly what we hear on social media, but have that idea of what's going on.
Hey Chief, will you guys be coming out and spraying weed killer around the fire hydrants again?
They will be coming out with the weed eater starting Wednesday and weed whacking all the items that we have that are not being cared for by property owners.
Thanks, sir.
We got Dusty, if he has anything
Dusty,
else to
yeah.
add. We actually have finance director, if he has anything to add tonight too.
I guess I don't have a lot, day number 6, but I just wanted to thank you guys for this opportunity and the community too. I guess there's not a lot here now, but it's exciting to come to a place like this. I come from right in the middle of Kansas, was where my position was last, and we see a lot of decline in what's going on, and we don't see a lot of advancement. We're more trying to suck in and things. So it's exciting to see some growth, and it's exciting, and it's also an exciting point in my career to be able to come on board with a group like that that's doing some new things and a community that seems to be, just from what little bit I've seen, kind of progressing forward. And that's exciting because, like I said, where I'm from, it's kind of going the other way. We've got some good things happening, but it's just kind of within ourselves. So I'm happy to be here. I hope I can help bring my experience to you guys and help out every way possible. Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Jeff.
I think if I might add, so two things. Number one, he will be a newlywed here in a few months, hopefully, so working
As long
on
as
that.
the COVID doesn't.
Yeah, and I would, when you get, I know my resume, because I worked in Jamaica, so that was always a thing about discussion. On his resume, it said Haddam City Council member, which number one, I didn't know what Haddam was at, I still don't. But I said, so how did you do that? He said, I got up one morning, went to the mailbox, and there was a note in there that I'd been elected to the city council. And he said, but I never ran for the city council. So he's gotten to serve in your spot for a little bit. I guess you had to resign that.
Yeah, well, I don't know. They're meeting tonight. I was gonna help them with their budget a little bit, actually. Before they get
I thought that was interesting, but I had to ask. Like, he didn't really run.
Yeah.
He got elected, and it was in the mailbox.
There was two members of the community that said it was my turn. So
Yeah.
That's how I got it.
That's what happened when there's only 3 in the community.
That's right.
Anyways, and I don't know, we do have Sean. Sean didn't get to join us very often. Thanks for the work, Sean, on the audit and dogging that. He's been especially focused on, we put in a new payroll system and trying to get it to link to our GL, and that's been a multi-month, and I know we haven't been able to give you the, until recently in May, the truly great, full GL kind of finance reports, and I wanted to thank him. I told him just act like a pit bull, and when it was time, I'd pull back on the leash, but until then, go do what you got to do to get it done. So he's done a great job.
Well, thank you very much. And
Getting that.
Sean, thank you for showing up tonight.
Yeah.
Thanks very much. Lisa, nothing? Okay. Chuck?
No, nothing.
Margaret?
I'll be short. Sean, thank you for all your work, the budget, all the bookkeeping that you do. I know that's a big job. Dusty, welcome.
Thank you.
Hopefully, we'll keep it exciting here.
Yeah.
No, welcome to Edwardsville. We're glad to have
Ask
you.
Mark about his first council
I know.
meeting sometime. He's got a few stories.
Well, I will say, I know Zach and Mike are super happy to have you, but we're all happy to have you here. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Garrett?
Mike, thanks for all the work on the town center project and all of that. And I'm going to reiterate what I said. I am absolutely in favor of that. And I really think that we should have passed that tonight, but I could see it failing, so there wasn't any sense in making a motion. I think that the plans need to be laid out and they need to be in place as soon as possible, regardless of COVID. I don't think COVID should just make the road stand still. I think we should still be able to do that. That's my 2 cents. And we all know that we need it. I've been kind of raising Cain with Walters a little bit about the silent crossings, and I want to raise an issue again about the possibilities of some more things getting developed on 32 that would increase truck traffic on 32 highway. And I think that there's some kind of way we need to contact KDOT and try and get something done about the traffic on this highway. I think that it's just out of control. I think the speed limit needs to be lowered, for one thing. I think Shawnee Rock should have some kind of a special tax put on them or something for the dump trucks that go through here that speed through Edwardsville, that destroy the highway. I think they need to be rerouted to 7 Highway, maybe, and catch I-70 there, or 7 Highway to 2440 and catch I-435. I think it's just ridiculous that this is a drive-through for that kind of traffic. So, whatever. I mean, I'm just saying that, and I'm gonna stay on Walters and I think Burroughs, and then I'm gonna see if I can't get some unified government along in that a little bit. I did wanna mention something to Mayor Alvey about the silent crossings tonight. He got it here too fast for anything he said. I think they need to be aware that is becoming quite an issue. The putting in the new ties this week with the noise that went on the whole weekend of all the safety whistles that they do and all that, it's almost unbearable. And now the rumor has it up there around the bank area that the silent crossings are getting installed right now. So, you know, it's one of those small town rumor things that happens. Just be aware that that's where I'm kind of standing on that. I kind of appreciate support from the rest of the council on my endeavors in the UG commission on that. That's all I have.
I'll try to be brief. I was hoping when Mayor Alvey was here that we would have had a little bit more discussion, a little bit more time. I know there's a lot going on outside of here that has to be handled, and I appreciate that he was here. However, I feel like even in the task force, whereas they were not a policy-making board, we still were not heard, and there were decisions made for our community, and we were not represented, and we had no voice there. So whether it was a task-making board or another avenue, I feel like we didn't have a voice, and again, we weren't represented. Followed up by the testing station that we had given them recommendations for, and then they went another route because they know our city better, I suppose. But it was just, I think it would be nice if we had more of a round table discussion where there was more time set aside, so we would feel a little bit more like we were a priority. And again, I appreciate that he was here. I don't take that lightly. I know he's got other stuff going on, but I'm hoping this isn't the end of the conversation. Completely separately, I had a business owner and a citizen ask me about considering limiting semi-truck drivers from coming up 4th Street in town, and maybe thinking about having them just use the streets that access the industrial park instead. They were talking about how our streets are not really set up on 4th Street for the semi-truck traffic as much if we have more individual traffic coming through, sedans and SUVs, people driving through, whereas if the train comes through, then the semi-truck takes up a huge amount of street space, and we could have traffic backed up further than we should toward K32. And I am not asking that we do anything toward that tonight. I just thought maybe we could think about if that would be a good idea
So
or not.
by 4th Street, we're talking about 4th Street south of K32?
He suggested considering diverting semi-trucks to use the other streets that go south of K32 instead of 4th Street, so that they weren't going to.
So you're talking about the only other street would be 9th Street? 9th and 98? But then, I mean, if you send them down, I don't mean to be a conversation, if you send them down 9th Street, then you got to, if they're coming back into this area, they've got to come through residential area to get over here, so I don't know.
I think that we need to verify whether that is already a no truck route. I don't know. But now if they're making local delivery, they have a right. So if it's truck and they gotta bring something to here, you know, they do have a right for local delivery. But if they're using 4th Street to get in and out, like to come down and go Blake Street to go over.
Right, and that was more of a
Unless
concern,
there's
not so
a
much people
detour,
coming
because of,
here.
you know, a crossing, you know, temporary closing of a crossing, that's a different, you know, if 9th Street was closed or 98, you know, 9th Street was closed and they had, so the detour was 4th Street to Blake Street over, then they could do that during the detour. But if they're doing it on a regular basis, we could work it. I don't think it's.
They shouldn't be. They should not be coming up. Now, we have delivery trucks, like liquor store, some of the just box delivery truck, you know, whatever it might be. So I'm not sure if we're talking semis. What we have experienced in the past is they got lost going either, they should have had a KCK address and or they should have been in the industrial park and they somehow diverted that way. We've seen that. But if you're talking about, for example, Anderson Trucking is one of those, I use the word very loosely, grandfather companies because they have a business that has a special use permit or some sort of exemption. And that's why in the north end, you'll see some semi-trucks, but they would say the company Anderson, okay? But other semis, unless they're having a delivery, that's not a route for them. Those roads are restricted and limited to the weight amount for a semi-truck, if you will. And so is 4th Street and several others. So there are designated truck routes, if you will. So if we're talking about semi-traffic and it's that noticeable, coming down 4th Street, which is something our PD would notice for sure, then either there's a lot of deliveries or people are going the wrong way, or then we need to step up with some enforcement, maybe some signage. I just have to take a look at what's going on.
I'll just keep an eye on it. It might be something that signage would deter, and I think it wasn't so much of the FedEx UPS, it was more of the semi-truck trailer truck. And so, just to, again, I don't expect anything to be done tonight, I just thought maybe we could keep an eye on it and mouse around.
And it could have been, we did have some closings and crossings over the last week or so, so potentially that, they could have seen an increase in traffic during that period of time. But we'll double check it.
Yeah. And then, finally, I just wanted to take a minute and just appreciate that that's a really big deal that our police department with 5 years with no citizen complaints, especially because citizens can complain for anything, whether it's filmed or not. That's awesome. I think that speaks a lot for the men and women we have working for our department. And I love the idea of personalizing the uniform a little bit more, even, high-fiving the kids as they go to school, or fist bump, or whatever you're allowed to do now in the fall, or, something like that, just to have more of a presence where they say, oh, well, I know an officer, and he's not like that. And so it just personalizes it some more, and I think that's moving the right now.
And not to belabor that point, but we have a very unique community, and so it takes a unique approach to reach citizens. As we all know in this room, even simple communications about things that are going on can be very difficult. We're talking strategy of sending letters and billings, putting on electronic, and even that doesn't capture all the people. And so we have that same, where are really our neighborhoods where you might see a cul-de-sac where they're playing basketball and doing these other things. So we have to take a unique approach, and we have to start doing a better job with our social media. But we just didn't have that kind of personality. We're not putting, we seized these drugs and this person got arrested. That's not what we're talking about. A branding of a personality, that these are human beings trying to just do a good job and do the right thing. And so that's what we want to see future coming, and maybe starting with the social media, Autumn Fest, those kinds of things, where we can reach out and take more opportunities to do those things. So that's what we're trying.
That'd be awesome.
Okay, Chuck? Dusty, you probably driven around town and noticed how nice our roads are.
Yeah,
And so, yeah.
they're everywhere.
Yeah,
You need to be cynical.
a couple things that struck me when I was listening to some of the comments tonight is, and this week we heard that KCMO is finally setting money aside to have body cams for the cops. How long have we had? 15 years?
We've had a long
13,
time.
10 years, something?
Ever been 10 years.
And so I really appreciate that kind of leadership and accountability for both the patrol as well as the citizen. And so I appreciate your forethought on that. And then the fire department administering a $1.1 million grant, and that's pretty cool. That is really cool. And so I appreciate the professionalism of both of the departments. And so in regards to that, the departmental expense management, I greatly appreciate that. You make our lives a lot easier because you're managing things at the ground level. And it means a lot. So I really appreciate it. It's good to have professional staff and leaders, and our goal is to give you a higher level of professional environment. You just got to do it at the right time.
I really don't have anything further to add to this, so let's move on into the a motion to go into executive session. Mike, what kind of a time limit do you want?
Yeah, I would think we're gonna need a minimum start of 30 minutes.
Okay.
I would assume you wanna just meet in here. I know Mr. Monson's here.
Yeah,
We can
We can vacate.
Host him if that's
I
okay.
can leave.
You can leave, yes, sir.
Oh, I'm happy to.
Well, I'm just saying.
Questions, you know, at whatever point, but,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll leave.
Well, but I mean, we can put you just right next door over there or something, just a place to sit. I mean, don't wanna, you don't have to leave the whole building, is what I'm saying.
Okay.
We'll put you up, so. Okay.
We need a motion to go into executive session.
So why don't we say 10:30, Mayor?
Okay.
By the time we get.
Make a motion that we recess into executive session.
Yes,
According to
yeah,
KCK
we followed that.
75-19B2, consultation with legal counsel.
Oh, I followed them.
That would be deemed privileged and
They
we
always
client
have a message.
relationship related to Village South Edwardsville project for 30 minutes to reconvene in regular session at 10:30.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to go into executive, recess into executive session until 10:30. Would the clerk please call roll?
Kahar,
Yes.
Mawad,
Yes.
Shriver,
Yes.
Stites,
Yes.
Adams.
Yes.
Hey, are you ready?